Welcome to 13 Days of Hallowtober.
Hello and welcome to Then Is Now Podcast special 2023 edition of 13 Days of Hallowtober. I am your host Rigor, and the topic this year has been werewolves. So far, we've covered several werewolf films, and today is our video presentation, The Wolfman Roundup, in which we'll discuss the original Wolfman from 1941 and its remake, The Wolfman, all one word, from 2010. So if you're listening to the audio podcast version of this show, you might want to check it out on YouTube. The link is youtube.com/user/UncleDeath1, because we are going to have some images that we're going to show and stuff like that. So yeah, check it out if you're only listening to the audio version. So joining me today is, of course, frequent guest co-hosts Spency and My-Kill. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Awesome. I think we're all werewolf enthusiasts.
Yes,
Definitely.
absolutely.
So we may have a few other guests that will pop in the show, and if they do, we'll introduce them. But for now, we've got a real big show for you today because, I did want to mention our co-host on the Fright Lounge, Bill Van Ryn, could not be here today, but I wanted to give a plug for his fanzine and I'm gonna just move my camera here so that not my camera but my thing so I can see it. I'm gonna show you his latest issue, which is Drive-In Asylum. And it's basically this magazine where he's got all kinds of interviews, and he has all kinds of awesome movie ads in it. And he's got an article by yours truly, which is the horror and exploitation films of soap opera star Tristan Rogers. So check it out. It's available on Etsy. I'll put the link in the show notes. But if you want to just look it up now, just do a search for Drive-In Asylum or Groovy Doom on Etsy or just the internet in general, and you'll find it. And it's a really great magazine. It's really fun. It's real thick. Whoopsies. I've just knocked almost everything over. But there's a lot of pages to it, and he puts a lot of work into it. So I highly recommend checking out Bill's Drive-In Asylum magazine. So anyways, our topic today, we are, of course, on the Wolfman Roundup. And we're going to cover, like I said, the original Wolfman and the remake. So now the original is a classic. It's beloved by everybody, at least everybody on the show today. I know there's far more people that love it, and how dare they make a remake? But, how indeed. We'll get onto all that here and see if the remake has improved with age. And I will warn you, there are spoilers here. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to give the synopsis of the Wolfman from 1941 first, and we'll go from there. We can, of course, jump back and forth, and any other werewolf movies pop up. Obviously, that's more than welcome here. So the synopsis for the Wolfman is: even a man who is pure at heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. Upon first hearing these words, Larry Talbot dismisses them as childish. After all, this is the 20th century. How can a human being turn into a wolf? Talbot soon learns how when he attempts to rescue Jenny Williams from a nocturnal attack by a wolf. Collapsing, Talbot discovers upon reviving that Jenny is dead, and lying by her side is not the body of a beast, but the body of a gypsy named Bela, played by Bela Lugosi. The son of fortune teller Maliva, Bela was a lycanthrope, or wolfman, and now that he's been bitten by Bela, Talbot is cursed to suffer the torments of the damned whenever the moon is full. So first impressions, and Spency, I want to go with you first, since you're the youngest one here. What are your thoughts on the original Wolfman? Do you remember when you first saw it?
Well, first impression of the Wolfman, I have a lot of impressions of the Wolfman.
Good, you do impressions.
I can do lots of impressions. My The Wolfman for me is a very special movie. I saw this when I was a little kid. I don't remember the first time I saw it. It's been one of those pieces of my life that I've always known has existed. And since there was never a time in my life where it didn't exist, I have always loved it and always wanted to watch it and always see it and always come back to it. Things like that. I I love the movie since I was a kid, since it stimulated my imagination. But now, as I've grown up, I appreciate it as a film as well. So I don't have any kind of fancy stories with it. It's just always been there for me. So I really have a deep appreciation for this film. But I also have a deep understanding of some of the fair critiques levied against it and the remake. So I'm not blindsided, but it is an important thing for me.
Right, right. And I don't have the number in front of me, but you and I talked about this on an episode of Then Is Now a while back, probably a couple of years ago.
I think it was the first couple of episodes.
Maybe, may have been, yeah. So, My-Kill, what's your history with the original Wolfman?
To be honest, I don't remember when I first saw it. I remember seeing tons and tons of pictures of Lon Chaney in the makeup. So I always had like a very clear idea in my head of what the Wolfman looked like, the classic Wolfman. And I always thought it looked pretty cool. But honestly, I don't recollect when I first saw it. Normally I would say, "Oh, Roger, you showed this to me because, you got me into a lot of horror stuff." But and I think that must be the case because it was kind of an older movie. So I probably didn't sit down and watch it until you showed it to me at some point. Um, but yeah, it's really good. I think in the beginning, just the sight of him creeping around in the shadows of the trees, looking like he did, that was enough to satisfy me the first time I saw it. Then this time I watched it and I was like listening to the dialogue and watching, lots of other things that happened in it. So, but yeah, it's very cool. Very cool.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I have the same experience as Spence. I grew up with it. The Universal horror films were on TV all the time when we were kids. And so again, I don't remember my first time seeing it because it was just always there, along with Frankenstein, Dracula, and all them. But this movie, I always loved Chaney's portrayal. It always made me want to become a werewolf. I love the story. I love the atmosphere, and I think this is among Universal's best horror films, in my opinion. And it holds up well. I think this movie holds up very well throughout the years. Watching it again today, yeah, there's a little bit of a creep factor with Chaney's Larry Talbot and his telescope, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But so I have some graphics here, and I'm going to conjure up because this is the Conjure. No, it's not the Conjuring. So I mean, would you guys agree that this movie holds up?
You mean like visually, story wise, just in general?
Just in general, yeah. Watching it like a modern audience watching it today, is it super dated or is it still enjoyable? I guess.
I think it's still enjoyable. Although again, I saw it, much later than a lot of people did, probably the first time. But I really liked the story. My roommate watched it with me. He'd never seen it, and he was really interested in it, and really, and we actually watched the remake last night, and he said, "No, I really like the original better." But yeah, I think Lon Chaney's did a really good job of going from someone who doesn't really believe in that garbage to holy shit, this is happening to me, and the suffering through it and everything. I mean, it really did seem like a curse. Instead of like you said, it made you want to be a werewolf, but I was like, well, the movie kind of presents it as something you wouldn't want to be. But yeah, I think it holds up for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Spence, being part of Gen Z, what do you think?
I'm not. I don't qualify myself as Gen Z. I'm so disconnected from it. It's actually incredible. Even on my own in the semi-adult world, I'm very disconnected. But this movie, I think, from a filmmaking perspective, absolutely holds up. I think from a story perspective and a dialogue perspective, it's narratively satisfying. I think it hits all the beats it wants to hit on, and I think it's honestly ahead of its time. It's going to be dated by sheer accepted practice because it's not some sort of future film. It's 1941. It's meant to be taking place in the 1930s, 1940s. So things just changed from that. It by nature of it being black and white is dated. Things like that. But I don't think from a filmmaking perspective that it is some lesson to learn in terms of filmmaking. I think it's a quality film where it really does do what it's meant to do, and with the makeup itself, the special effects, I mean, yeah, they feel dated to us and things get more advanced, but even from a modern audience perspective, it's not it's not at all that bad for things we can get now. We have worse CGI that better executed in this movie.
Mm.
So I think just purely from most of the standpoints, I think maybe from a cultural perspective, we've improved from it because of some certain story elements. But at the end of the day, I think that's just kind of a case by case basis. From an actual filmmaking perspective, I think it's a quality film that if they tried to make it today and simply modernized everything, it would be a reasonable success.
Right. I agree. So, all right. So I'm going to share some pictures here, some movie ads. This one is from the Baltimore News Post from January 12th of 1942. And you guys can see that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we've got.
I love that shot of the light coming up from under his face. It makes him look so scary.
Yes. Yeah, it looks cool there. What
and boobies.
fascination did this monster have for women?
It's really only one woman that he's
to terrorize
fixated on.
women. Jesus.
You got to put that on there to get people in the theater.
Right, exactly. It was always about getting butts in seats. Oh, and then our second feature is W.C. Fields never given a sucker an even break, which is a funny movie.
That dude in the it looks like Vincent Price. It's not Vincent Price, but that guy. Yeah.
It does look like Vincent.
He does look like Vincent Price from this.
Yeah.
It's probably
so
a little
funny.
pre-Vincent Price. I think that's the psychiatrist in the movie.
Yeah, it's the doctor.
Yeah.
The poor gypsy lady looks like a frog.
Yeah, it's not a great. I mean, Claude Rains looks pretty good.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm Claude Rains.
Yeah.
I'm Claude Rains, bitches.
I find it very interesting that the ad for the film has the Wolfman like plastered front and center.
Yeah.
And people were like, it's really more of a testament to the fact that it wasn't what he looked like. It was the transition from that a person looks like that. Like, yeah, we've been able to do special effects for a little while. You know, we've been able to do theater for ages, but the fact that you're able to go on film in seconds, take Lon Chaney and turn him into that is what was so impressive.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So the next one is, this is an Italian poster with Maria Uspenskaya. I like this one. I've never seen this one.
That's very cool.
Isn't that cool?
Except for the bat in the background. I think that kind of kills it because it doesn't look realistic at all. But the rest of it is really good.
Dracula going, what about me?
I know, right?
I like to think that Dracula's keeping his eye on everything, you know.
I can turn into a wolf too.
And it's funny, he's got his hands crossed, like as if he was going to be in a coffin. But yeah, that's a great poster. I was surprised I never saw it. This is from the Italian release.
L'uomo lupo, the man wolf.
Right. Mark of the man wolf. Spider-Man didn't know. All right. So anyways, we've got this one from this is from the Berkeley Daily Gazette from April 1st of 1942. The night monster killing, prowling, terrifying a countryside.
Yeah, a countryside. Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Again, playing alongside W.C. Fields and never give a sucker an even break. Oh, and there's free parking. So
would they have played the comedy first and the horror movie second, do you think? Or
I think it comes after.
Yeah, I think because this is where the term B movie comes from. B movie doesn't mean bad movie. It means you had the A movie and then the B side, like on an old record, you had the B side.
I never knew that.
W.C. Fields' film would be the B movie.
Cool. I was wondering where that came from.
Yeah. This one's from the Ottawa Citizen from April 1st of 42. Is he man or unholy beast?
I can't even see what the hell the image is at the top there. It looks like a demented gorilla.
I mean, it's not an inaccurate statement for what.
Like I can hardly tell that it's. Oh, I see it now. Okay, I can see his face. Okay.
And this is like ripped from that other picture. Like it's funny how they made all these ads, you know. And I
like the dude looking up. That's cool.
Yeah, that's Bela.
That's Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. The mustache. Yeah.
And this was playing with Swing It Soldier.
Interesting.
what is the it in that?
Right.
I like
What
how they say second
Title.
big hit exclamation point, but it's like a teeny tiny like portion. It's
Right.
not like a
Yeah.
50-50. It's just second big hit. This movie that you're not gonna get anything.
Well, you know, when
Right.
I worked at a hardware store back in the 1990s, and at one point, one of my duties was to make the ads for the newspaper, and it was long before Photoshop, and we had to literally cut and paste and squeeze everything into a certain size. And so that's probably why that's so small. Is like they were like, oh shit, we got a second movie, we got to add that in, you know.
Yeah. I want you to make a poster for the Wolfman. Okay, sure. Turns it in. Where's the other movie? What other movie? Oh no.
Yeah.
Hold on, I was just double checking.
If only it wasn't for the word "the," it could have moved the whole thing up. You know?
Right. If it was just Wolfman.
It's important to remember that it's 2 words, the Wolfman,
Hmm.
No, this is from
and then King of the Zombies.
the Sacramento Bee from January 31st of 42. And this was playing with King of the Zombies, which was I think Bela Lugosi was in that. I know Leonard Nimoy had a part in that. It was actually a movie serial. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, and I wish there was someone here to correct me, but death and mystery on the loose, chilling, thrilling adventure, the Wolfman.
Oh, don't feel bad. At the end, we'll get the latest war news.
Right.
Yes.
Very important. I mean, suppose at the time, this came out in what, 1941, 1942?
Yeah.
So that's
Oh,
at
yeah.
the height of the World War II.
When
Yeah.
I was going through trying to find the newspaper ads, there were so many articles like giving the progress on the war and what was
Wow.
going on in Europe with maps and all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it is a British, is like a predominantly British movie.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
Then we've got another similar one. I like this one.
Oh, that's neat.
The giant first run horror show.
Boy, there's so many different ones.
Yeah, and what's funny, it's like, look at now Lon Chaney, the son, in his greatest role, but over here it goes, remember Lon Chaney, the father, as the Phantom and the Hunchback.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
wild.
Amazing silent movies, which we should cover on Fright Lounge at some point.
I never realized how big Lon Chaney is until I watched this movie again the other night. Like, he towers over Claude Rains.
Oh yeah, he's huge.
Yeah.
It's a big dude.
He was over 6'4", I think, wasn't he?
It looks it.
Might have it in my notes, but the super spooky laugh co-hit, and it's swell. It's swell. The body disappears.
Swell.
Not many people feel comfortable
People
using
feel
that word.
comfortable using that word. I always thought it was kind of natural.
Now the Invisible Man has a girlfriend, and she's invisible too. The body disappears. And Jane Wyman, of course, who was Ronald Reagan's first wife.
Okay, I'm gonna refrain from saying something
The body
about
part
the
disappears.
Invisible Man's girlfriend. Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay. And here's another interesting one. Starting tomorrow, the man turned beast, his unearthly body, a twitching tomb of strange desires.
Twitching. Oh my God.
That's weird.
Twitching. I also think that image is a little bit suggestive that, like,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I know he's just like, I don't know.
Whoa.
What is he, James?
I
Spader
didn't
from
see it
Wolf?
before.
It almost looks like he's like undoing his pants or something to get busy. And I feel
Yeah,
like
hold on, wait. I'm just realizing, where is this girl in the movie?
I know.
This image of this woman is nowhere in the movie.
No,
Yeah.
she's just in the promo materials.
Yeah. She never wears that dress. She never faints. She never.
I'm not even
Yeah.
convinced that's actually Gwen.
The same actress. Yeah.
But there's
Evelyn
also
Akers.
a Woody Woodpecker cartoon, Hollywood Matador, Toontide musical, and the Pussycat Cafe. Strange.
Pussycat Cafe. Wow.
Ugh.
I'll stop there after the movie.
Oh, and the new master character creator, Lon Chaney, as the Wolfman. No pressure there at all.
Okay, I'm going to ask a dumb question. Is Lon a short version for another name?
No, his father was Lon Chaney, and his name was Creighton Chaney. But they said when he started making movies, they were like, "Oh no, we need to make you Lon Chaney Jr." And he always hated that, so it was basically a stage name.
Okay.
Lon Senior. I don't know if Lon was.
I didn't know if it was like short for Leonard or some other name. I don't know.
Lonnie.
Lon.
Spence, do you
Yeah.
happen to know about Lon Chaney Senior? Is that short for anything?
I do not. We do have this magic box here that can tell me anything I need to know. Let's find
Where'd
out.
you get one of those? I wish you had one.
Leonidas.
Oh,
Leonidas. Wow.
That's cool.
Leo Chaney.
Leonidas Lon Chaney. Lon is in quotations. So Lon was a nickname.
Right. Probably too many letters to put on a marquee. So
Leon Chaney.
Yeah, I like Lon better. Lon Chaney has a ring to it. Leon Chaney kind of has a less of a ring.
But Leonidas Chaney sounds like he's gonna fuck
agree.
the Gauls or something.
Yeah, it sounds like he's gonna defend us from the Persians.
Right. The Vikings.
Oh, that's kind of a cool one. Although he
Yeah.
looks a little bit like a golden retriever.
I was gonna say he's awfully coiffed for a wolf.
He actually in that one looks more like the remake.
Yes.
Kind
The
of.
nose.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
For
It
sure.
actually looks like D. Wallace's version in The Howling at the end.
It's also very interesting. I like this one. I like
yeah.
this poster because the last names are all you need. Anyone can recognize Claude Rains. So you see Rains, you're like, oh well, now I'm in. Lugosi, now I'm definitely in. Chaney, yep, you've got me sold. I'm going to see this movie.
I love. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I can see that very easily. It's a very good idea because their names are rather iconic. Even if you didn't know it was Lon Chaney Jr., like everyone knew who Lon Chaney was.
Right.
Yeah, that was
I think I would do the same thing. It's like you put certain names in a row on a poster these days or in a trailer, and I'm like, oh, I'm seeing this.
Right.
I don't even know what it's about, but I'm seeing.
I'll tell you what's really sold too is the second hit, The Jungle Woman, Flesh of Beauty, Soul of Satan. That sounds
woohoo. A tiger temptress. That's
whose
what we all
thrill
want.
is to kill.
We want a bad girl.
A tiger temptress
to murder us after we're done. I like what it says in the little spiky star thing over here. See, his fingers turn to claws, his eyes grow wild, his face become a beast's, hair grow on his hands, his teeth sharpen into fangs or two fangs, his heart turned to ice. I would have cut out the two middle lines, but
yeah,
his eyes grow wide, his teeth
hands,
sharp.
What, he touched it too much? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that sounds. If they had just said like his skin grow hairy or his, something. Yeah,
he touched too much.
It's just not just on his hands, right?
Yeah. Oops! Oh shit! I hit the button by accident. Okay.
Wrong direction.
No, I was just making sure I didn't skip one. All right, so this one I found in the Altoona Tribune from December 30th of 41. And these days were awesome times to go to the movies because you had so much. You were literally in the theater like all day Saturday. Look at that. 22 cents for a matinee, and oh my god, 30 cents for the evening.
Jesus, people don't. We're not made of money.
Children, 11 cents always.
Oh my god.
Dirge of Death.
Ellery Queen and the Murder Ring. So if there's a mystery, that's the best Ellery to get, I guess. His hideous howl, a dirge of death. His unholy heart, a twitching tomb of strong desires.
Dirge, a lament for the dead, especially one forming part of a funeral rite, a mournful song.
His hideous howl, a dirge of death. Oh, that makes sense. Dirge, it's a good word.
Dirge.
Lon Chaney as the Wall Man. Oh, the Wolfman. Okay, I couldn't read that.
The Wall Man.
Like, what the hell?
Oh my god, you can barely see the thing
F
that differentiates the F. The little lines.
The Wolfman.
The Wolfman.
Woof. The Wall Man.
Yeah. The Wolfman. The Wolfman. That would be a great parody. The Wolfman. They turned into a little dog.
Yeah. It's instead of a wolf, he becomes a chihuahua.
Oh my god, that'd be great.
That's why
I'll bark, no bite.
Mike, did you ever see growing up the Disney movie, The Shaggy Dog?
Yes.
And the kid finds the ring and he recites the In Corpora Canis Mutato or something, and he turns into a dog. I always wanted to be that.
I used to love that movie.
Then
it's in the same category as like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang for me.
Chitty
Bang Bang.
And then, of course, we've got South of Tahiti with Brian Dunleavy, who is well known for doing a lot of Hammer films later, a decade later.
White Savage.
Queen of
50 sarong-clad goddesses of love.
Of men and beasts. All right. And then the next
so funny how they were just so blatant about it back then. Like,
we don't
hot chick.
Right. We're gonna have to read this whole thing. I just got it because it had a lot of cool, and they're talking about all the actors. They're like, it's not just a film with, one star. It's got all these other guys, and they, rattle off, Maria Swinskaya and Patrick Knowles and everybody that's in it. But this was what I really wanted, was this here. A werewolf's victim, Lon Chaney is the monster, and Evelyn Ankers is his prey in Universal spine-chilling horror drama, The Wolfman. And it's funny when you read the reviews and the discussions about this in the newspapers back then, it was considered grisly and horrifying. They had not seen anything like it. Like, to us, it's so tame, especially
Yeah.
when we talk about the remake. And this is the reaction people had to this is the reaction people today had to the remake.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, it's grisly. And what did it say here? There was something interesting. The Frankenstein films featured Boris Karloff. Dracula starred Bela Lugosi, and the late Lon Chaney Sr. was virtually the only star to appear in Phantom of the Opera and the original Hunchback. Now Universal's has the Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. Young Lon Chaney, seen in the title role as a hair-raising characterization, said to outdo all of the previous horror creations of the screen. So
that much
again,
is true.
not too much pressure, though.
No, right?
Oh, and this is one of the things, to my point here. An eerie graveyard set for the horror drama The Wolfman is a particularly gruesome sight for certain employees of Universal Studios. To prevent lawsuits, movie companies use names of studio employees whenever names are seen in motion pictures, on storefronts, signboards, and other objects. I can't. Something for printed matter. For this reason,
Bearing.
tombstones. What is it?
Bearing printed matter.
Bearing printed matter. Okay. For this reason, tombstones in the graveyard set bear names.
That's so creepy.
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh my God.
Lawsuits.
Could you
Jesus
just
Christ.
imagine? Could you just imagine come in and be like, hey, Spencer, yeah, we got your name over there on one of the tombstones. You what?
Right.
Should have made one of them Ebenezer Scrooge.
There you go.
This must be before the disclaimer of like any resemblance to persons living or dead, blah blah blah, is purely coincidental. Because otherwise, they wouldn't be worried about lawsuits, right?
Well, that and if there was a like a sign that said Coca-Cola, you'd have to change it to like your key grip bubble, or something.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Here's another one that you can barely see. I try to lighten it up, but you can't really see the Wolfman here. Again,
It's so funny.
Evelyn
The
Ankers.
same girl.
She's just like, she must have been busy having a head upside down.
Yeah, she's a yoga practitioner.
I think it's one picture they just keep using over.
I
and
think
over
it
again.
is too.
New horror man. That's a great name for like a parody movie. It's like New Horror Man.
It looks like he's in the middle of explaining his perspective on life.
Yeah, see, it's his TED Talk.
So yeah, most people think, but actually,
What most people don't understand about lycanthropy is.
Right. I would pick only the ones with pictures, but I thought this was hilarious because it goes introducing the picture that makes Frankenstein and Dracula sissies and is suitable for the entire family.
Suitable for the okay. Make up your mind. Is it like this horrific thing, or is it suitable for the?
Well, they're in the friendly theater. They have to add that sentence.
That's true.
That's so freaking
Sanasaw, Oklahoma.
Made them sissies.
Look at how they spelled preview.
Even sissies is spelled wrong.
Where did they? I don't see the word preview. Where?
At the bottom, Saturday Night Preview.
Oh yeah, I've seen it
Preview.
spelled that way before, but it's sort of like when you spell Starlight, Lite, or the Tonight Show, Nite.
Yeah.
It's sort of a stylized way of doing it.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And
Saved him a letter.
We've got this here. Has to get up early.
It's like he's doing his hair.
Well, he is. He's putting the makeup on. It's Jack Pierce.
Oh, okay.
This role, that of the werewolf in the Wolfman, Lon Chaney Jr., continuing to duplicate the career of his famous father, must report to Jack Pierce, makeup chief. And of course, I have things in the way. So
4 hours before the camera starts to roll.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So, and if you recall, in this movie, we don't ever see his face transform. We see his feet.
Yeah.
And then I think we see the reverse face at the end, right after he's killed.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like at least the ads are like, you're going to see the Wolfman. This is the Wolfman. Come see him move. Like, that's kind of like a good selling point.
Yeah.
It's like you're coming to see the Wolfman. You don't need to know anything else about the movie. It's just about Wolfman.
Yeah.
Here, we have him. He's real.
Right. So once again, we've got Claude Rains and Warren Williams and Patrick Knowles and Bill Lugosi and Evelyn Ankers there.
A little image of the fainted woman in the background there.
Yeah.
I like the one at the bottom with her hands on her head.
Yeah.
Ah,
And it's playing
what
with
the crust
Jukebox
is
Jenny.
happening? Jukebox Jenny.
Well, let's see. That's what it is too. The boyfriend wants to see the Wolfman, and the girlfriend wants to see Jukebox Jenny. So it's
Right. Got to negotiate.
Oh my god!
I took my girlfriend to see this. Her eyes were glued to the screen.
Yeah, she liked it, huh?
Oh, she loved it. She's a big into the makeup side of it too. So it was a double feature in this and American Werewolf in London.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You told me that at the drive-in, right? Which was it?
Was that a drive-in near my
Milford
school?
drive-in, or
no? It was this local hospital uses its grounds.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, it's, they use yak hair for the hair on him. Yak. Okay. Little Ace Ventura reference there. So then I think this is probably the last one. Yeah, it's the last one. We've got it from the Kokomo Tribune. Way down in Kokomo. We've got the night monster prowling, killing, and once again terrifying the countryside.
The countryside.
It's playing with the Mexican Spitfires, baby. Or the Mexican Spitfires.
Mexican Spitfires, baby.
Right. It's possessive. There's a comma there.
Mexican Spitfires, baby. That's funny.
No, just the child. No. Sorry. Once again, he's eating this girl that does not exist.
Right. I think that's Evelyn Ankers. They must have just done like a day of promo shooting. All right, you just lie back and let him hold you, and we'll take all kinds of photos of you and that.
From our stage, 8 live turkeys, 6 live chickens. Tonight about 8:30.
About 8:30. That's crazy. All right, so I'm going to stop the share here because that's all I've got for the movie ads. So we can dive into this. Where did my notes go? Oh, there they are. And I just need to open this up. All right. So yeah, George Wagner directed this. We had talked about him on previous shows. He did a lot of TV shows. He also did the movie Mad Monster with Chaney Jr. and he did a few episodes of the Batman 66 series. I think his directing here is solid. I think the camera work is great and everything looks beautiful in this movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that a lot of it is a lot of the light, you can see everything you need to see. They really had a good understanding of black and white. This is kind of at the end of that era, since by this point Wizard of Oz had already come out, so like color was on the rise, but this was still a solid art form for the movie. And I definitely agree that the camera work worked, a lot of it, the staging, the blocking of all of it worked really well, and you got to see everything. And then when you didn't get to see something, it was intentional and impactful. It didn't feel like they were pulling anything away from you. You got to see his face transform back into the Wolfman, because the whole point was seeing the Wolfman. It was later movies that they were like, let's play with what we can and can't show.
Right.
So I love it.
And it wasn't until like the early 70s that black and white was more cost effective. Until the early 70s, then everything flipped, and all of a sudden color became cost effective and black and white became more costly. So I think I love black and white, especially like, again, oh, by the way, if I haven't mentioned it, the Marvel film I talked about with you, Mike, recently, the Werewolf by Night, it's not just on Disney Plus. I think it's also on Hulu, I think.
Yes, I forgot to watch that.
Yeah, it's mostly black and white with like sort of like Sin City, where certain things like blood and stuff are in color. So
that's cool. Yeah, I love
Kurt
that.
Siodmak wrote this. We've talked about him before. He's done a ton of Universal films. He's done Invisible Man Returns, Invisible Woman, Invisible Agent, Son of Dracula. His name is sort of synonymous with the Wolfman. In fact, he's credited in the remake because they based the remake on his script for this movie. So, and
Perfect.
Chaney, what can we say about Lon Chaney Jr.? And he's the only actor to play all the Universal monsters. He's played Dracula, the Frankenstein monster, the Mummy, and in this one, of course, the Wolfman. And he's played it so long.
He's the only Yeah, he's the only one with that kind of like quadrifecta of playing the monsters, and he's also the only Wolfman for the Universal Monsters era. Nobody else played the Wolfman but him,
Right.
which I really love that.
Which he almost didn't want to do Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein because he thought it was cheapening the monsters, but I think that's one of the best ones.
That movie has a lot of lore behind it itself because it does include the Wolfman, but even the mainstays, Abbott and Costello, rejected the first script.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of like hesitation with that movie, but I think that one is a great kind of a finisher to the era.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah,
this movie, the first Wolfman, really kind of set the stage for a lot of things, and it's very interesting because it's also the only one without direct sequels. It reminds me, the closest I can explain it to kids my age is it's like the Incredible Hulk of like the MCU, where it's only has one movie, and then this character shows up in other people's movies to get his character arcs through there.
Mm.
And
Right.
it's very interesting and, in my opinion, well done. I don't think they ever really lose what they had. It's just a matter of the creative direction changed over time for a few things.
Right. Right.
This movie stays solid though.
And folks, if you get a chance to check it out, go back through our back episodes because we've covered all the Dracula films, all the Frankenstein and Wolfman films, all the Invisible Man films, all the Mummy films, and there's a lot to them. Some are good, some are not so good, but like Spencer said, there's just the Wolfman story continues throughout several other films. In fact, I wanted to mention, well, I get, it doesn't matter if we jump back and forth. So in the remake, they do bring up the whole concept of only a person who loves him can truly kill him. And that wasn't introduced in this movie, The Wolfman. It was introduced in House of Frankenstein.
Mm.
So
It is interesting though that they kind of kept that they had that as like a subtexty thing. It wasn't a hard and fast rule, but in the original movie, spoilers allowed, he's killed by his father, which is
Right.
a big
Mm.
deal. It's actually a very nice commentary on the family because now the dad has lost both sons. So now there's this whole thing that you kind of have to think about, oh, what's going to happen next with that? And so there is this level of, and it kind of isn't too that hard and fast since Bela gets killed by Lon Chaney, but they kind of try to keep it for at least the Lon Chaney Wolfman.
Yeah. Yeah. And then of course we've got well, I mean, I just want to mention one last thing about Chaney was that sadly he was a major alcoholic, which affected his career. And after Abbott and Costello, his career kind of took a downward spiral and he died of heart failure at age 67 in 1973. But we had seen him in a few other movies. I think he was in what's that one? Spider Baby. And he was in a few others in the early 70s where you could tell he's drunk. Oh, and then one of the films, folks, that we covered, and of course the name escapes me and I'll have to dig it out, but he was in a Mexican horror film where he basically plays Lawrence Talbot, the Wolfman, in it. So it was kind of cool to see him, even though he only has one word of dialogue in the movie. But we'll quickly run through the cast here. Of course, we've got Claude Rains, who plays his father, so John Talbot, Casablanca, the Invisible Man. I mean, Claude Rains was freaking awesome. He brought gravitas to this movie, I thought.
I thought he was perfectly cast too. Sir John Talbot is one of the highlights of the entire movie. Whenever he's on screen, he's just chewing the scenery, and I really enjoy listening to him talk.
And that's an interesting point about this movie too, is that they're not quick to believe him. They're all quick to go, oh, it's all in his head. He's just delusional for some reason. And even the father, until he sees it with his own eyes at the very end, and by that point it's too late. He does not believe it. He just thinks there's something wrong. And that's an element, I had forgotten about this movie, is that I guess it wasn't in this movie. It was in the remake. In the remake, they put him, Lawrence Talbot had been put in an asylum for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason that got into my head and made me think that happened in this movie, but it doesn't. He just went to live in America, lost his British accent somehow. And
I mean, that's kind of what accents are. They're just reflections of where you've been living for ages. So
Mm-hmm.
he's been gone for 2 to 3 decades. I thought about that too, but I'm like, actually, it's kind of interesting. It actually is a good. I don't know if they thought about this when they were making the movie, but it's a great way to show the distance between him and his family. Because his family's they come to this British town. They're kind of part of the aristocrats. He comes back and he's like, I've been working with my hands for the past, amount of time that I've been in America, and I haven't been doing aristocratic things. There's a whole point that one of the scenes I personally really love and I'm using for one of my classes is when he asks his dad about the story of the werewolf, and his dad's like, oh, it's just some science baloney about schizophrenia and how it's just a symbol for, the inner nature to be an animal comes out. And he's like, yeah, these things you can't really touch. I can work with wires and tubes and electricity, but I can't work with these foreign concepts. And it's a very interesting difference, because he's kind of an infamous celebrity in the town. The prodigal son returned.
Right. We had Warren William, who played Dr. Lloyd. We saw him in the poster there. He was in a bunch of pre-code talkies, which he played a character called Michael Lanyard, who's also known as the Lone Wolf. So I always thought that was kind of ironic. But then, of course, Ralph Bellamy was Colonel Paul Munford. He's the guy. What's this? Murder? Gypsies? What's going on here? Love that guy. He was in Trading Places and Coming to America. He was Randolph Duke in Trading Places. I don't know if you guys have seen that, or Mike, you may have seen it a long time ago. He was one of the old guys that they make the bet.
I would have never picked up on that.
Yeah. And then, of course, we've got the great Maria Ouspenskaya, who plays Maliva, the Romani fortune teller. She came to America with a Russian group called the Art Theater in 1922. And when they all went home, she defected to America. She became a Broadway actress. She founded a school for dramatic arts, and she basically taught acting for quite a few years in Hollywood. And they said she sometimes made it difficult for her coworkers because she was so heavily involved in astrology that it dictated when she could be on camera and stuff. So,
oh my god. Oh my god. I mean, I suppose at the time though, it was a lot less disproven than it is now. And to be fair, it's also a cultural thing. She gets cast as the Romani woman. And I always really liked that this movie doesn't jab at them. In fact, it actually almost critiques as subtly by one scene the church, about how they're like, it's a bunch of pagan celebrations, and she's like, I couldn't break the tradition if I tried. When somebody dies, we're proud that they got to the next life. And she was happy that her son was no longer suffering, that there was this level of relief. And I always really liked that. It made the Romani kind of side of things, it didn't feel like it was just propaganda of like more white nationalist stuff that we would see kind of often from the time. It very much felt like they thought about everything. And Maliva is a fan favorite character. She's just as good as Claude Rains, in terms of what we get to see on screen. So I really always,
she brings gravitas too.
Looking back, I appreciate that they don't, it's never part of the movie that, oh, well, the gypsies are the gypsies. Like, no, they're right. Everyone else is crazy for not believing Lawrence Talbot. She's the only one who's like, hey, by the way, you kind of have a werewolf problem, just so you know.
Right.
So I always really liked that.
I liked her like somber kind of, she kind of maintained this, like, she's had such a long life and been aware of so many things that she looks at everything like the big picture sort of, and she's got this kind of somber, like even in the beginning when they go to get their fortunes told, and she walks into the camp and she just looks at Lon Chaney for a second and then like walks away. It's like, okay, she knows what's going on. And yeah, and in that scene, it's the Catholic priest who seems like the one who's kind of out of touch a little bit, because he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, it is what it is, man.
Yeah.
And then he leaves. So yeah,
I always get frustrated at that scene, because it's like, why doesn't she just say, we're celebrating his life, we're not crying
Right.
and boo-hooing his death, and that at that time, I think, to the Catholic Church, that was an alien concept. It really wasn't until, well, except with the exception of the Irish, it was an alien concept to most Catholics in the rest of the world. You had to be sad, and it's like, no, celebrate this guy's life,
which is weird because it's that he's going to a better place. That was always like part of
Right.
Catholicism too. Oh, you get to go be with God now. Like, so okay, so
Right.
why are we so unhappy?
I
It's
love
also
her line.
very
No, go ahead.
It's also very interesting that they chose to involve the Catholic Church in this movie. England is not a predominantly Catholic country.
Mm.
Neither is America. So I always found that very interesting that they chose that. I think it was just an easy authority figure in terms of religion to put up against Maria Ospinskaya. But I always found that very interesting that they chose the Catholic Church because it kind of distances this Wolfman thing from Jesus in a way. It distances it from the Judeo-Christian stuff. Whether it was intentional or not, it does a good job of setting the stage for the fact that this is more naturey than it is gods and demons. And I was
Mm.
really like that. That always really helped stimulate my imagination. I thought it was a good idea to address that the church does notice these things, but they're just not involved in the local politics.
Mm.
Yeah. And I always loved her line. She uses it twice in the movie. Once when Bela dies, and then once when Larry Talbot dies. She goes, "The way you walked was thorny through no fault of your own. But as the rain enters the soil, the river enters the sea, so tears run to a predestined end. Now you'll have peace for eternity." I always liked that. I thought that was a great
Mm.
send off. And you know what?
That
Why?
was good.
Another reason why you would go, why would a priest be mad at that? I think it's a great thing to say, you know?
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I one thing that did irritate me a little bit about this movie, the original, and maybe because I watched it twice, but in the last couple of days, the whole thing about the even a man who says his prayers by night and blah blah blah, the wolf's bane and may become a wolf. Like they said it 3 times in the first like 15 minutes of the movie, and by the third time I was like, Jesus fuck! If they say that one more time, I'm gonna strangle somebody. Like enough, we
Yeah.
got it, we got
Yeah.
it. And
And
then they're like, "Oh, everybody knows about werewolves. You know, it's we all know about that. It's everybody knows." And he's like, "What?"
it it does a good job, in my opinion, of differentiating Sir John's perspective of things versus the people on the ground because they know the poem, they know the story. He's
Mm.
like, it's lycanthropia, it's a form of schizophrenia. One of my favorite lines in the entire movie is he's like, "Oh, it's a form of schizophrenia," and Larry Talbot goes, "Well, that's all Greek to me," and Sir John goes, "Well, it is Greek."
It is, yeah.
It's a very
Yeah.
it's a nice little script writing thing that kind of in a way diffuses the tension, so
yeah.
it makes this horror movie feel a bit more realistic than just
Mm.
horror for the sake of being horror. And I always really
Right.
loved that, even if it was kind of a product of its time. I love that.
And I think too, though, Mike, to your point, I think I'm gonna play devil's advocate here because I agree with you. Yeah, they say it 3 times in the first 15 minutes. Like, really? But back then, there was no cable, there was no videotape or DVD or there was even no rewatching it. It wasn't until these movies were re-released, what, a decade or two later, that they actually got really popular. So
Mm.
they weren't expecting that. So they probably figured we got to drive the point home and maybe say this a couple times because no one's ever going to see it again. But we want them to remember it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my guess. So I don't know.
And plus, you had people coming to the movie late,
Yeah,
coming in the
Yeah.
theater late.
In the
Yeah.
last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big thing. I think it's interesting that they do a good job, whether it's intentional or not. They do a good job with this world building. The Wolf's Bane thing is kind of alluded to with Bela when the Annie, I think her name was, had um Jenny, that's what it was.
Jenny, yeah.
Jenny had the Wolf's Bane, and he's like kind of pushes it away off the table because it makes him uncomfortable. I always like that, and they never really address it until later movies when Larry Talbot is buried in Wolf's Bane.
Right.
And
Mm.
I always love that stuff, and I thought that was very interesting. And then the autumn moon thing, I I find it interesting that they kind of imply that being a werewolf is a seasonal ailment. Like
Mm.
Yeah,
it's the
you talked
autumn
about
moon
that
is
before.
bright. You know what I mean? Like in the summer, it's like, oh, I gotta wait till August, and then my sorry, my werewolfism kicks up, and it's werewolf season.
It's like
Yeah.
I always like that. It's always very interesting to me. It adds a little bit of nuance to it, and it gives this, for the purposes of imagination poking, it gives a loose explanation of why we've never caught on to werewolfism before.
Is wolf's bane a real plant?
I
Yeah.
believe it is, yes.
And it only grows at one time of year, like
That I don't know.
in the early autumn or something.
Aconitum Aconite, Monk's Hood, Wolf's Bane, Leopard's Bane, Devil's Helmet, or Blue Rocket. It's a
Wow.
genus of species. I see. So Wolf's Bane is a specific type of is a specific plant. Poisonous.
To
I
werewolf.
see. They apparently they're just poisonous in general, and native to the northern hemisphere in North America, Europe, and Asia, where wolves are actually mostly.
Huh.
Very interestingly. And yeah, that's really all I can find on.
Okay. Because I was always
Wolfsbane.
wondering about what's the connection, like in the poem that they all say. It's like you're more likely to become a werewolf during this time when the wolfsbane blooms.
I
But
think the idea
why?
is that the Wolfsbane is this not antidote, but this deterrent to wolves. So they're like, the Wolfsbane is blooming. Well, now we know where the wolf might or might not be. Things like that.
I
It's kind of
see.
one of the like almost a natural deterrent in a way,
That okay, that
which is
does make
so
sense.
curious to me. And I like that this is all implied in the script. Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't ever actually said, but it's implied that clearly somebody had some imagination behind all this stuff, or took inspiration from real life legends and all that jazz. And I really, Wolfsbane gets its name for being the poison used to kill carnivores such as wolves and panthers in the 18th century.
Oh.
It was put into raw meat to bait the animals. Some believe that it was even aconite that caused rabies in these animals later on because of its horrifying side effects.
Good Lord.
Damn.
In Greece, it was thought to have one of the first poisons ever created. In Rome, it was used to poison enemies. Shakespeare is a deadly poison. Covered blade in Hamlet.
Damn.
Right.
Chinese
Weird.
culture, aconite, poisoned arrows.
Shoot that poison arrow through my
poten-
heart.
Whenever somebody says poison bullets, this is what they mean. Wolfsbane. Used
Wow.
by apparently even the Nazis tried experimenting with Wolfsbane.
Jesus.
Lord.
Okay.
Oh,
Wow.
there's an alkaloid in it. Okay, wow, there's a lot. There's a lot going into this. Jesus. So Wolfsbane apparently is a poisonous plant, which I don't know why they picked it, Ben.
I know, right?
Wait a minute.
I'm gonna carry it around with me. La la la.
It might be one of those ingested poisons, but still, that's super. I mean, but that's interesting that they kill wolves with it, and werewolves can kind of sense that.
Yeah.
I kind of dig that. It's a very loose thing, but it's there.
And as you mentioned, Spence, that's how Frankenstein meets the Wolfman opens up, is when the two grave robbers go in and open up Lawrence Talbot's tomb. He's lying there with the wolfsbane all over him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a teeny tiny detail, but that's the stuff I love about certain Universal monster movies, is they cared about these details, and the Wolfman is one of those movies where the details really come through. And I always like that the Wolfsbane was a big thing. It kind of falls off from a narrative perspective. It doesn't ever actually show up again. But it's still interesting that they added it at all.
I'm surprised if they hadn't in the Underworld movies, they hadn't had bullets laced with wolfsbane.
Yeah,
that's what I was just thinking. Yeah, why? Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Really interesting.
I guess silver is more accessible or more.
Silver also probably has less chance of failing, because you can shoot a piece of metal at somebody versus making sure the poison gets into them.
Right. Well, I mean, what did Roy Scheider do in Jaws? He put the poison in the bullet and then put wax on the tip of the bullet. So
what?
Remember in Jaws, he made the bullets. He shaved off the tops and he was putting poison in the bullets, and then he dropped wax on them. Or was that Jaws 2?
I don't think that was the first Jaws.
I don't remember that at all.
I remember the needle.
Yeah, you're right.
Get this tiny needle through his skin.
It was Jaws 2. So all right.
Either way, Wolfsbane plays a big role, at least in the setting up of this movie, and I always really liked that. It always helped. I just learned all of this Wolfsbane information, so I love that they had that.
And it's funny too to think about, all the tropes of werewolves throughout the years have pretty much come from this movie. This movie's not based on a book like Dracula or Frankenstein. They basically took a mythology and said, hey, to make a great movie, Sort of.
I gotta say though, go ahead.
I was just going to say, sort of like the Mummy films, was because of the opening of King Tut's tomb in the 1920s that had like a public interest in mummies, so they again, not from a book, they just took it from, real mythology. But you were going to say, My-Kill?
I didn't like the pentagram thing in this movie. It was just, it seemed so like out of nowhere. And well, first of all, the pentagram didn't look like a pentagram. It looked like a star in a little kindergarten room, like, but like the fact that everybody knew about it, like, oh, he's got the cane and there's a star on there, and whoa, that's the symbol of the werewolf. And then he was the only one who could see it on the hand of his victims. And that just seemed like, and I mean, they probably enjoyed putting that in because it was kind of interesting, but this pentagram is more of a Satan symbol, isn't it? And then I felt like that was like a unnecessary mystical aspect.
I agree with you that it was definitely an unnecessary addition. I think it was another attempt at their world building that just never actually did catch on. And it doesn't quite make a lot of sense, and it's only loosely used as like a, oh no, we need to worry about Gwen's safety now, instead of him just running away and suddenly that actual distance would have saved her. Oh, she's going to be target. It's a way just to have the Wolfman target one of the characters, which was I think is fine for the movie, because admittedly, if that's the weakness we're talking about, is this one thing that happens a couple of times, that doesn't change the stakes of the film, not all that bad. But yeah, I agree with you that is one of the things that I look back and I'm like, oh, I forgot that existed. It doesn't exactly stimulate my imagination.
That was a weak point, and it was used to horrible effect in Cursed, which you and I talked about, My-Kill.
In Cursed, yeah, they had the people who were werewolves had it on their hand.
Yeah. But I could be wrong, and Spence, you might want to look this up, and I want to take a quick pee break in a little bit. But if I remember correctly, the pentagram was actually just sort of like a nature symbol for pagans and Wiccans and all that. And it wasn't until Anton LaVey, who was the Black Pope of the Church of Satan back in the 1960s, adopted the pentagram as the official symbol of Satan.
Oh,
I've done a decent amount of research
into the 60s. Yeah.
Yes, it's the pointed down symbol.
Yes,
is the symbol of. So they took that from
bits of horns.
Yes, they took that from bits of the Bible, because basically the pentagram came from the 6-point star, the Jewish star,
right.
Because King Solomon in the Bible was a big guy on capturing demons. He had the pointed up pentagram to capture. They had the pointed down to summon. Right. That was the idea. So then if you see it pointed up, it's in Supernatural, for example, the show that went on for 15 goddamn years, they use it to great effect for the Devil's Trap.
Right.
It's pointed up. If it's pointed down, it's slightly different, which is really where this came from. So yeah, you're right, Pop. Up until for this movie's purposes, that was a pagan symbol that just wasn't really used anywhere else. They're like, oh, okay, that's the pentagram. All right, cool. It's a shape. We're gonna use that.
Right.
So it's fine for the movie. I don't love it, and I think it's one of the things that I'm glad the remake kind of forgot about.
Yeah, me too.
I always thought this was one of the weakest points of this movie. So a few more things about this movie. I mentioned that yak hair was used in the werewolf makeup. Originally, it was intended for Henry Hull in the film The Werewolf of London, which came out before this, but he ended up doing his own makeup. He didn't want to go with Jack Pierce's makeup.
What a loser.
I'm glad they didn't do that. That movie's okay, but it's not, it doesn't hold a candle, to this movie. So but apparently Bozo the Clown's hair is also yak hair. His wig, the red wig.
Really?
Yeah. Chaney was allergic to it, but it didn't stop production, so that was kind of cool.
Oh God, that's terrible.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
No, I cannot imagine being allergic to my makeup. That sounds terrible.
One little thing too, and I noticed it this time around too, and we had talked about this when we discussed the movie previously, but when he shows up to take Gwen out, and he goes, "I wore my cane," and I just
Yeah.
thought that was interesting phrase because that was an accessory back then. You wore your hat, you wore your shoes, you wore your cane. You know,
Ah,
need
Yeah.
the cane to walk. It just was an accessory.
Well,
instead of saying I brought my cane, or yeah.
Yeah.
I actually talked about this in a presentation for school about certain fashion history. I'm in theater, don't ask. But what I can say is that when it comes to canes, it makes you look more distinguished. You look like an older gentleman because you need a cane. So for men, it's an accessory that just kind of enhances the thing that would make you desirable. Is, you're older, generally older men are more wealthy, things like that. So men's accessories was the linchpin for men's fashion versus women. It was a lot more about colors and style.
Right.
Men usually had very similar, very, very similar, like suits, but it was the accessories that kind of changed things up. So like when he's going cane shopping, she's all about like, oh, well, this cane, looks really, really good. It's got a silver head, it's got a wolf's head on it. It's kind of a local thing. Stuff like that.
Right. And didn't he think it was a horse or a dog at first?
Somebody said a horse later in the movie. They're like, oh yeah, I found a cane with a horse head. And it's like, no, it's a wolf, genius. Like, so it was,
everybody is so quick to correct them that it's a wolf, but it's a weird looking wolf. Like I would have to look at it for a second and go, is that a wolf?
Yeah.
But everybody's like, it's a wolf.
I want one of those though. Anyways.
Okay, can we just get the peeping Tom thing out of the way?
Oh yes, yes. I'm sorry, I meant to bring that up.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah,
it's so bizarre because in the movie it's treated as like no big deal, but nowadays, if you told a woman that you looked at her in her room through a telescope, she'd be like, "Get the fuck away from me!"
Yeah, you'd get arrested. That's a crime. That's a crime.
Yeah, right.
It's so for anyone who's curious and hasn't watched the movie, which you should. There's one of the few things that I think they can live without later on in the movie is part of the thing is that they're bonding over a telescope, Larry and Sir John. Part of that bonding is Larry fixes a telescope. He's a man who works with his hands. That's what he went to America for, and all this stuff. And then he discovers that the telescope can be aimed at the dressing room of this girl that lives across the way. So he does so, and then he proceeds to flirt with her.
He watches her change her clothes and everything.
Yeah, there's a whole thing where he watches her, and that turns out she's married. There's that little plot hole. She was engaged. Sorry, she was engaged, and he proceeds to continue to flirt with her.
Yeah. And he's like telling her, "Oh, what about those earrings you had on your dresser?" She's like, "What? How do you know what I have on my dresser?"
He's very, very creepy and pushy and uncomfy. I mean, it's honestly no better in the remake. I'm not gonna lie, because Gwen, instead of being this girl that he looks at from a distance, she's his brother's ex. His brother had just died within like at least a month of the events of the movie.
Yeah, so that's a little creepy.
There's a whole thing with that too. It's no better in the remake, unfortunately. I don't know if they're paying homage or if they're making the same mistake.
But the remake, at least in the remake, she sort of herself reciprocates the attraction to some degree, which I mean kind of happens in the original too, but in the first meeting or two of her, it's so creepy.
It's actually a very interesting thing to think about, because throughout the movie they're very clear that like Gwen is treated as her own independent person. Yeah, women weren't exactly treated all the greatest, but Gwen is still Gwen. Her dad's like, she can do what she wants. She's an adult woman. If she's engaged and goes out with a guy, that's on her. Yeah. So I always really liked that. I always thought that was very, very, I don't want to use the word like grown up, but it made everything feel very, it feel very, very interesting and a lot less overtly sexist.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I always really enjoyed
I hate to use this word, but it's progressive for its time,
It is, and I think that's a good thing when there's a time where women aren't given their actual proper treatment.
Right.
So it's fair.
I like the fact that like she says no to him like 4 times. Like he's like, oh, so I'll come by when the store closes and we'll, go for a walk. She's like, no. And she says, no, no, no. And then he's like, all right, I'll see you at 8. She's like, ah. And then she comes out of the shop and looks around like, well, is he here?
Right.
Yeah, there is a little bit of like she's not exactly the most morally like upright character herself. So
And she doesn't even tell him she's engaged until like a lot later.
I know.
When he's about to kiss her against the tree, she's like, well, I should tell you, I'm engaged.
Yeah, engaged no less to someone who works for your family. Like there's this whole thing where she's engaged to the gamekeeper.
Right.
That's who it was.
Right.
Who that actor, I've seen him in a ton of stuff.
Oh, Patrick Knowles. He played another character named Frank in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. Remember? Frank, I can't do it. I can't destroy Frankenstein's creation.
Oh yeah. Yes, that's where I've seen him from. It's just so funny to me that they had that happen. And I think it's mostly I would chalk that up mostly to the fact that Gwen was written by dudes.
Maybe, yeah.
So I would chalk that up to a lot of that. Not so much like they're trying to have an excessively moral question. It's just the fact that Gwen is written by a bunch of guys.
It's that idea that if you persist, then the woman will cave.
Yeah, exactly. I am glad.
No matter what her situation is, if you're pushy enough, she'll cave.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be, keep asking, and she'll eventually say, "It's like that's very, very predatory." To say the least. And it's not the core message of the movie. I like that Leary's actually treated as this flawed character. He's going after an engaged chick. Not his best move, but then he's suffering really badly. And later in the movie, he has nowhere to go. So he goes to Gwen, who's someone he knows he can trust too. She's, they've talked enough that he feels comfortable with that. And I actually really liked that. I always thought that was very it was a narratively satisfying choice because he like kind of cares about her even though he like kind of shouldn't and all that jazz. So it kind of I think it works for the movie of their goal is to have, let's show this tortured character and all the stuff that he has to go through. So I don't know. It's not perfect, but it is at least pretty decently.
What happens to the fiance, the guy, Patrick Knowles' character?
Frank.
He lives.
Where does he disappear to? Oh, okay.
He lives.
They're at the carnival, and then we don't see him again, right?
Well, he's there at the end when Gwen gets attacked.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He's there. He's there at that point.
He had the dogs out because he had the dog too, right? Because he was the game.
Because he was the gamekeeper.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was this whole thing, and I once again they didn't. It was early in the filmmaking time, so narratively speaking, they weren't exactly making the most narratively satisfying choices at all times. So they only killed 2 people, and we didn't even meet the groundskeeper when he died. So I get that it was a product of its time.
I think part of the mentality of writing Gwen's character was based on the old joke. It's don't stop. What
is it that unfortunately the irony is that I remember Bill Cosby saying this, but he was making a comment about women, and he was like, they're like, come here, go away, come here, go away, go away. Like I remember him saying that one time way back in the day when he was like funny. And
when he was funny, that's probably why he turned to roofies.
I mean, he was kind of blatant about it, about what his problems were with women.
Although to some degree, because of the way, not that it's like a woman problem, but just that like over time, the way the dynamics between men and women have worked, there has been some of that, like woman's supposed to play hard to get, and the guy is supposed to be persistent.
It is a thing that happens kind of consistently, and I always, it's actually a very interesting way to put it with the whole werewolf analogy, because instead of it being puberty this time, it's just like, well, I want this girl, and then he wants her so bad that he's afraid of his, inner psyche attacking her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they kind of address that in the remake, and we'll talk about that shortly. But
kind of, sort of.
Yeah. So let's do our final thoughts on the original first. So, okay. Spence, we started with you. We'll continue with you. Why don't you give us your final thoughts on the original Wolfman from 1941?
My thoughts on the original Wolfman is that as dated as it can be with certain things, it is a strong movie that tries to tell a strong story, and I think succeeds in that. I think it's ahead of its time in some aspects and still stuck in its ways in others. And I think it's flawed, but I think it's a quality film that everybody should see, and I thoroughly encourage all of my friends to see constantly.
Excellent, My-Kill.
Yeah, I really like it. I like the fact that it's in black and white. You guys said that the way the lighting was handled was really good. I know there was never a moment in the movie where I was like, "What the fuck am I looking at?" It was very clearly shot, and they did a really good job of making even though there's not a lot of killing in the movie, they did a good job of making him look really scary. And even when he did attack someone, it almost looked like he was trying to strangle them. And then they said later, like the groundskeeper had his throat torn out or something, but you didn't see that, you know. Although I do have one other nitpick that I wanted to say, which is possibly my bad memory or possibly something that was kind of omitted. When his father kind of ties him to the chair and says, "Oh, you know, I'm going to go deal with this, whatever." And he says, "Dad, take the cane, take the cane." And then we never get to see him like bust out of the chair. Like I always thought that would have been a cool scene of him transforming and busting out of the chair, but he's just like out running around.
Right.
And then the father sees him and goes, "Ah, shit, he got out." But like I thought it would have been cool to see him like just have one more at least partial transformation and show him like busting out of the rope and breaking the chair or something. I thought would
Yeah,
cool.
I agree. I think that would have been a satisfying point to add, but I don't think the movie is necessarily harmed by its missing
Right.
per se.
There's just like a little gap where like, okay, he's restrained, and then the next time we see him, he's running around. I was like, wait a minute, what happened in between?
It's funny. I almost wonder if that's a modern versus, older time disparity, because maybe they just didn't think of it. Whereas the three of us, that's what we want to see. We want to see the Wolfman turn and then rip through the chair. Maybe they were just like, oh, we could have him do that. Oh, we don't have the budget for it, so forget it.
Yeah, I think that's really, really something that kind of it came down to.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say I like the way they did the feet.
Yes.
I would have thought that they would try to avoid showing the feet back then because of the weirdness of the effect, but I think they showed it when he was transforming. They showed it when he got his foot caught in the bear trap.
Yeah.
They weren't shy about it, and they looked really good, I thought.
Yeah.
I like how dog-like they looked.
Yes. Yeah. I used to
And they
walk
were
around
really
on my
like a
toes
cross
that.
between oh, sorry, what?
I was gonna say I used to walk around on my toes like that because of
Yeah.
But
It really looked like a cross between a human foot and a canine leg.
right.
Yeah, they definitely had a proper dog look to him, which and I'm pretty sure this was a pioneering thing for the effects team. This was nothing like this had been done before, so
yeah.
there is that aspect to it, that it's very important to remember that this was new when they were making it. So the fact that they had so much detail, I think is just a testament to what they were really, really going for and good at.
And I love Lon Chaney's acting, like how mild mannered he is in a lot of the scenes, and then when he gets caught in the bear trap, and when he's in human form, realizing how bad things are, when he notices the star on Gwen's hand and he's like, "I'm out of here." And then there's another point where I think it's after the bear trap when he turns back to human and he realizes the dogs and the hunters are after him, and he looks so panicked, and like his face is sweating and his hair is stuck to his face, and he's like, I really believe that he was suffering. And even when he was writhing around for being in the trap, I thought that was really well done too.
Oh yeah.
And go ahead.
Because there's so little stunts, his acting really does come through pretty strong, with what he can and can't do in terms of like how they did things. And I always really loved that. I love that he's so different that they didn't have a stunt double. It was Lon Chaney under the makeup being the Wolfman, and you could see it. You could see some of the Larry Talbot, but you could also see some of the Wolfman plenty coming through on its own, and I love that. It's a good explanation of how film acting is and what you can do with it, especially at the time, since theater was still super, super huge, and way less in contention with film.
Mhm.
And in talking about the transformation scenes prior to this, in 1931, we had Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Frederick March. And if you watch that and you watch the transformation scene, you're like, how the fuck did they do that? And I learned recently, actually, what they did was he had different colored types of makeup on his face, and they would swap out filters, like literally while it was on him. So he literally transformed because the filters would filter out certain colors, and then as
Wow.
they added them in, all of a sudden his face just transforms into Mr. Hyde. And
That's fantastic.
for
Huh.
1931, it's a freaking amazing, amazing effect. And that's a movie actually we haven't touched at all. We should cover that at some point because
Yeah, they had to be so creative because they didn't know about any of the shortcuts that came later, so they had to
right.
figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, one last tiny thing.
that's fine.
Claude Rains. Earlier, Spencer was talking about how much he loves Claude Rains and how he steals the show every scene that he's in. But I really remember that one. Oh, sorry, that was a little burp there. I really remember that thing that me Grimlock. There's just one quick line when toward the end of the movie when Lon Chaney is like kind of having a breakdown in front of his dad and sort of going, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and da, 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 da. And the guy says, and he says, what's the barking dogs? And the father says, oh, they're out hunting for the creature. And he goes, Lon Chaney goes, they're hunting for me, and he starts going up the stairs, and Claude Rains goes, all right, stop it, like just fucking snap out of this bullshit, like he just yelled. It's a great angle of Lon Chaney going up the stairs, and then when Claude Rains says stop it, it like he immediately stops and turns around, looks at him, and it's very like, I just felt that was great. Like that moment, it's just like stuck in my head.
That's awesome.
Definitely. They had a really good casting with the family dynamics here. The actors' chemistry was definitely there, even if some of them were underused, like the doctor and all that.
Right, Warren Williams. And one other thing I did want to bring up also is the elephant in the room that I can't remember, Spence, it might have been you and me. We touched upon it when we talked about American Werewolf in London, but there's a really glaring blooper in this. And I can't remember if it was the first transformation or the last one. It might have been both, but Chaney's in a tank top basically. And he transforms. And when he's the Wolfman, he's got a full button down shirt on, like buttoned all the way up to the top button.
Yeah,
I didn't even catch that at all.
So anyone who's like watched the movie will vaguely remember when he takes his shirt off because he's about to transform, and he's sitting in the chair, and then we see his feet transform, and he gets up and walks away, and it's very, very thrilling. Like, oh my god, did he really just turn into a werewolf? Oh my god! And then we see him, and he's got like a full like black button down.
Maybe he grabbed a shirt on his way out of the house because he was afraid of getting a chill.
And with his claws, he was able to button those buttons.
Yes, he buttoned it up.
It's one of my favorite continuity errors because it's a very great way to, it makes the effect work, right? The effect wouldn't work if they had to do his entire chest. That was just too much. They didn't have the budget for it, any of that. But they never thought about it of, wait a minute, hold on. He takes his shirt off and then he puts it on? Like, because they never thought of it. They were just like, oh, it just goes from he's suffering, and then Wolfman.
Wolf. Right. Yeah.
And then Wolfman. The other
I
side
didn't even notice it. I gotta say, I didn't notice it.
The other side of it, the counter argument is an interpretation argument. The interpretation is being a werewolf was never real, and that it was simply a moment of psychosis. So for him, we see the Wolfman, but for him, it's just a matter of he's freaking out, starts to lose his grip on reality. And then at some point in his grip on reality, he never transformed. He just puts on a shirt and becomes the Wolfman and starts attacking people. So it's just a kind of a mental illness psychosis thing, like Claude Rains describes, was kind of the idea. And I don't know if I fully am with that, but I like the idea for the artistic interpretation that this is in fact
all in his mind.
Yeah, it really is just a psychotic break from coming home and losing his brother and stuff like that.
That would be an interesting remake if they ever decided to do another one to take it from that kind of angle.
Yeah.
And not reveal that until the end. That's interesting. Wow.
it's also like there's some movies that do this. One of my favorite horror movies that it's a stupid title, but it's called The Bye Bye Man. It's very, very good because they show this entity that's haunting people, but nobody ever dies by supernatural means.
Mm.
So in this movie, the same way is nobody really dies by supernatural means. They just die. They die by getting attacked by what seems like an animal. But then they talk about wolf tracks and stuff. So you're not 100% sure if it really was a wolf, or if he really was a wolfman, or if he really was just going nuts and was able to simulate wolf tracks in his own mind, kind of deal. So I like that from the artistic perspective, but I never felt like
It's an
it was
interesting concept.
Yeah, I never felt like it took away from what we actually got to see in the movie. And they weren't intending that, really. They were just making a movie about a wolf man.
Right, right.
So
And they really avoided blood in this movie. There was like no blood or stabbing or claws or anything. It was just like it looked like when Lon Chaney attacked somebody, it looked like he was strangling them at first. And then when there were 2 killings of bashing something to death with the silver cane.
Right.
But no,
Yeah.
like, you know.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
you never really
what they
see that.
describe is far worse than what we actually see. Oh, his head was bashed in, or her throat was ripped out.
Yeah.
You know, I always hated that in movies though too, and even for some reason this comes to mind. I don't know why, but
What, Bye Bye Man?
No, the Disney animated Pocahontas, where the Indian guy has no shirt on and he gets shot in the chest, and there's no blood. And I even remember, and of course I was in my 20s when that came out, or whatever, 30s, but I was like, wait a minute. But no,
That's stupid.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Because then you're showing kids that you can get shot and not have no effects. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have to show everything, but there just needs to be like some blood of like, oh god, something has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even in like the Disney Tarzan, he gets raked across the chest by a jaguar, and he screams in pain. And then there's like little lines on his chest for the next like 5 minutes of the movie, and then that disappears too.
Right.
It's like, dude, that was a serious injury.
So, My-Kill, did you give your final thoughts on the Wolfman?
I sort of bounced all over the place, but yeah, I think it's really, really good. It's a classic. Everybody should see it at least once if you have any remote interest in horror or whatever, and look at these older films through the lens that they were, like, remember the time it was made when you're watching it, and don't like, oh, the effects suck. It's like my issue that I have with Terminator 1 and 2. Everybody's like, second one's better. I'm like, second one has better effects. But for me, I like the first one better for a whole multitude of reasons. So people, especially nowadays, tend to get distracted by anything that's, slightly not realistic. And, oh, this movie's not as good. Like, well, So yeah, I mean, if you're going to watch an older movie like the old King Kong, or even Wizard of Oz, or, the old Universal monster movies, bear that in mind. And I think these black and white movies are fucking awesome. I love watching some of the stuff in black and white.
Oh,
definitely.
Yeah. So,
I agree.
They're so good. I mean, this is one of my all-time favorites. I love this movie. I love everything about it. I love the characters. I don't mind the little nitpicks that we had, or whatever. It's thrilling and fast-paced. And you just mentioned King Kong. That movie is freaking, for an hour and a half. That is fast-paced. So we should readdress that at some point.
Yeah.
But this movie, the music's iconic. I mean, Chaney, like I said, Chaney and the cast are great. I highly recommend this movie. It's a great one to introduce people to the Universal classics. I think the original Frankenstein and Dracula and the Mummy are really good, but I think they might be a little slower pace for modern audiences. If you introduce them to this first, and they get it, if they don't know anything about black and white, of course, every young person in my life knows, is accustomed to it. But if they're not accustomed to it, introduce them to this film first, and then watch some of the other classics, because I think this is like a gateway drug.
I would agree that this movie is kind of the toppest of tier when it comes to things like black and white and looking really good, because there is this synonymous thought process of, it's black and white, it's definitely a lower quality camera and lower quality equipment, which isn't always untrue, but it's definitely a lot more. This movie is very good quality for what is actually happening. So I really always appreciated that, and always really loved that.
And
did King Kong? Oh, here, what?
I was gonna say, these were high quality cameras for its time. They were not.
Yeah.
Not a low budget film.
No. No, this was a good a big movie, and it it pulled through in my opinion.
Right. And My-Kill, what were we going to say about King
I was
Kong?
going to say, did King Kong come out before this or after this?
Oh,
1939.
1930. Yeah.
Oh,
Was it
before.
30 or 39?
I think it was 30. No, I think it was 39. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just saying 1930s, but yeah.
Okay.
It was definitely one of the proto monster movies of its time. I mean, yeah, we had Dracula and Frankenstein, but that was the first time it was a non-human.
We
At
were
least the
both
biggest
wrong. It
time.
was 1933.
Oh, I was closer.
Ah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I was closer. I was gonna say I was like, oh, it's our early 30s, but I'll accept that I was
I think
wrong.
Wizard of Oz was 39, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind were both 39. Both in Canada.
Okay, one final thought. I know I keep saying this. I noticed how big Lon Chaney was at the beginning of the movie, and I was hoping there was going to be at least one moment where he was towering over in Wolfman form, towering over somebody, before they ran from him or whatever. But they never really played up his size when he was wolfed out. But
That
Yeah,
would've been cool.
I agree. I think they do that better in the remake. I think the remake kind of is just a good description for all the things that they could have done that they just didn't think to do, and then they eventually end up doing it.
Right, right.
I always really like that.
So that being said, let's segue here into the remake. It's called The Wolfman, all one word, Wolfman, from 2010. And let me read the brief synopsis. Though absent from his ancestral home of Blackmore for many years, aristocrat Lawrence Talbot returns to find his missing brother at the request of the latter's fiancée, Gwen Conliffe. He learns that a creature has links to an ancient curse turning people into werewolves when the moon is full. To save the village and protect Gwen, he must slay the bloodthirsty beast, but he contends with a horrifying family legacy. So let's do first impressions again, and I'm going to go with you again, Spence, because I know I took you to see this in the theater. You were 9,
Uh-huh.
right, in
Uh-huh.
2010?
Oh yeah.
So tell
Oh
us
yeah.
about your first impressions.
This movie holds memories because I had grown up fully knowing the Wolfman, and as a 9-year-old, I freaking love this movie. As an adult, I still really, really enjoy it, and I think it's a fantastic remake. It's it's comparing it, apples to oranges. They're two really fantastic films that I really love. That I find hard to compare, but I like this remake for what it is. It is a remake. It is the Wolfman, and it plays up to what you want. You wanted everything the original to be, and I really love that. And I think this movie is maybe not nearly as masterpiece like as I made the first one out to be, but definitely a strong film that has a lot of good elements and a lot of valid critiques levied against it as well that I think is worth the watch if for anyone who's remotely curious of what the Wolfman is.
My-Kill?
I think I saw this in the theater. I may have seen it with you. I don't know, but yeah, I was very critical of werewolf movies and I honestly don't remember fully what I thought at the time. I remember the scene in the asylum where he's this is probably goes back to me thinking about breaking out of the chair.
Yeah.
Where they're like saying, "Oh, look, we're gonna prove that he doesn't really transform," and then he really transforms. Like I thought that was awesome. But I remember coming out of the movie going, it's typical horror movie. But this time when I watched it, I think I've watched it once in between. So maybe this was my third time. This time I really liked it a lot. I don't know if it was just like the having seen the original and then watching this one. Like I love the whole opening where it immediately starts with a guy, looking around in the woods and looking for something, and then the werewolf descends upon him and rips him to pieces. And the way they show the glimpses of the werewolf and the claws and everything. And there's one shot where there's like a silhouette of the claws in the foreground and the guy running in the background. And I thought, well, that's really cool. It looks like a comic book panel. It has, yeah, it's, I don't know. This time watching it, I thought it was excellent, but the ending, the last like 20 minutes of the movie, I felt like it was kind of unraveling a little bit. It wasn't, but yeah, it's great. I'm not comfortable comparing it to the original, really. I see it as its own separate entity, but great. I mean, so much fucking violence. If I was to write a werewolf movie, that's what it would be. Severed arms, heads ripped off, claws going through people's faces, and that was just good shit.
viscera all over the ground.
Yeah, like intestines and fucking that scene where he rips the guy's arm off and it goes flying, and while it still has the pistol in its hand, then when it lands, the pistol shoots. That was a great fucking scene.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I remember Spence obviously seeing this with you in the theater. I don't remember, Mike. Were you stateside in 2010?
Yes,
Oh,
I think
that's a good
so.
point.
I think so.
No, we moved
Really?
to Hawaii in. Oh yeah. It was 2012. We moved to Hawaii.
I was
Okay.
gonna say, I think so.
All right. So you may have
Yeah.
gone with us to see this. But I remember not hating it. I remember really enjoying it. I always felt it was a decent monster movie. I really dug it. I was okay with the changes to the original movie because they made sense. You know, like you said, they didn't really do the telescope thing. They introduced the fact that the telescope was there, but there was no peeping tom issue in the movie. There was no source novel to go off of, so this is a true remake of the original film, not a reinterpretation. For example, like John Carpenter's The Thing, which we talked about on last month's Fright Lounge. But great visuals, good acting. This thing got killed by the critics. It did bomb at the box office. It was supposed to be like an $85 million budget, and it went up to, like, I don't know, 150 million, and then it only made like 120 million or something around that.
140, like 8 million or something like that.
Yeah.
It didn't make its budget back.
No.
Oh, that
I
sucks.
I see. Okay, so the Wolfman, the changes from the original, I think are good. I think the changes overall are a good idea. They expand on the lore of what you were dealing with more. They really went back and forth about what was going on. They changed the character dynamics, I think, in positive ways, for a lot of what we saw. That's my opinion. I think a lot of the changes were overall a net positive for that. I have a problem with Anthony Hopkins acting. I think this is one of his weakest movies ever.
Mm.
I'm sorry, but I rewatched it and I was like, and he just was so disinterested, and he didn't come off as disinterested in a crazy way that kind of I think they were intending. He came off as I'm doing this to get an addition on my house type disinterested. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really get the vibe that he was trying to come off as, and they changed it very differently. I mean, Sir John
Yeah.
was not this affluent man who was very involved in his local town's politics. He was, kind of a hermit, like Bruce Wayne in Dark Knight Rises. He was, rich guy living out in his rich place that's fallen apart. And I didn't mind that. I thought that was perfectly fine for what the movie was, but I didn't think his acting reflected it well. And I think that a lot of his lines fell flat for me.
I think it depended on the scene, but I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It's just I was surprised too, because like Anthony Hopkins, I mean, Emily Blunt, I think her character was weakly used. I think they could have done a lot better with her character, but I think she did a good job as time went on about what was going on. But like I said, the guy who did the effects for this movie got an Oscar for this one, and after he had gotten an Oscar for American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, Rick Baker.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so clearly like there was some love in this movie, and it was there. Benicio del Toro, he looks like Lon Chaney Jr.
He does.
So I love that.
I noticed that in this time around, he's big like Chaney Jr. and he's kind of got his mannerisms. And I guess, he's an avid collector of Wolfman memorabilia. So he came into this 100%,
He was a producer.
Yes,
And it shows. I think his love for this movie really shows. Once again, the effects, like we said, the effects and the gore, got nothing better. They're so gruesome, but also very actually scary in a way. Like it's surprisingly like well done in terms of how scary it is. For a werewolf movie, you're like, oh yeah, we want to see the violence, but at the same time, you're like, Jesus Christ, I don't think he deserved that.
The one big issue in this movie was the transformation scene, because Rick Baker really wanted to go like 90% practical. And the problem was the director, Joe Johnson, and we'll talk about him in a minute. He came on board at the last minute. I think like a month before they were going to go into shooting. And so he kind of basically said, well, CG is actually a little more, it's a little more convenient. It'll help us out, to save us. In the end, it didn't save them any money, and it didn't do anything. I have a whole issue with the transformation scene, but so Rick Baker was pissed off about that, but he had basically based his designs on the Chaney Wolfman. And, I think it shows. I think there's so much love in this movie for the original film.
Oh,
Yes.
definitely.
One of the big criticisms I did notice though was that it wasn't all that scary. And I remember thinking that afterwards, like, yeah, it was great and it was thrilling but it wasn't really terrifying on any level.
I
I don't
I
know
can
how they could
see
have done
that.
that, but
I would push back on that and simply say that there's not a lot you can do with a werewolf movie to make it different from all of the other werewolf movies, especially when remaking a werewolf movie.
Fair point.
Is really my thought process, because
Mm.
making a monster movie scary is so difficult. Like Alien is scary because it was new and different, right? Jaws was scary because it was new and different. Nothing had been done before like it. But
right.
all of those sequels, they made things, they had to change things up. They added more of them. This is almost like it's not a sequel, but it's a remake. What did they do? They added another werewolf. You know what I mean? So I agree with you that it wasn't scary, but I think the whole point was that it's meant to be this. I don't think they catered to the personal torture that the character was going through that they really could have, and that the
Yeah.
original was kind of trying to do. And I think that would have been a bigger stake on the psychological horror, because he's locked in an asylum. That asylum scene is fucking awful.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that I think
Yeah.
is really where they should have stuck the fear. It's not the fear of the monster, it's the fear of the man. And they didn't really do
They
that.
could have capitalized on that a lot more. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Shit. I felt like a lot of the werewolf scenes were scary, but what I thought was weak was the fight between the father and the son at the end. It was just like a lot of trampoline jumping and throwing each other across the room, and it was good, but I thought it could have been a lot better, a lot more vicious, and um uh I felt like it was too short. I think Anthony Hopkins died kind of suddenly, and it almost looked like they had rehearsed it, like him jumping on him and then the Talbot kicking him and him going into the fireplace, and it was just kind of like, oh, that's it, like I don't know.
I agree. Yeah.
I
It's
wanted a
funny
little
because
bit more
that
like
final
hatred
fight.
between them in that fight.
Yeah. The final fight though between father and son kind of reminded me of that Incredible Hulk episode, the first, where it was a lot of
Yeah,
posturing and throwing each other around.
which is like the worst. You can always tell in a TV show or a movie when they want to like prolong a fight is they just have the characters throw each other around,
Right.
because it's like that's not really that much of an attack. If you want to hurt somebody, break their arms and legs or punch their skull in or something, like do something concrete, stab them or something. But like throwing them is just like, okay, you're just trying to prolong the fight,
I
unless
I Yeah, with prolonging the fight or have a good narrative reason. I think the biggest thing is that they didn't have a good narrative reason for a lot of what we're talking about. I mean, if it made more sense of like if they established Anthony Hopkins' character didn't want to kill um Larry, but Larry did want to kill him. So now there's this like back and forth of one of them is trying to be lethal, one of them is trying to just prove a point. Like almost like a challenging a pack leader in real wolves, which would have been interesting, but they didn't do that. They just kind of let things happen. And I can definitely agree that was a weak point. And honestly, the weakest part of the movie was a lot of the stuff they just tried to add.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, whenever they took inspiration from the rest of the movie, it was really strong and
yeah.
really fun.
Right. Right.
One of the things I didn't like. Sorry, Raj, you want to go ahead?
No, I wasn't gonna say anything.
Oh,
I just
okay.
said
I thought you were about to say something.
What
One
was
of
you
the
gonna
things
say?
I didn't like is that they established the cane and the fact that the cane had like a silver dagger in it at the very beginning of the movie, and then I kept waiting for that to come around again, and when it did, it was like this afterthought. It was almost like the writer went, "Oh fuck, I forgot we had that thing. We got to use it," and it was used for like 3 seconds and then discarded, and that was the end of it.
I agree. You're right. I definitely think that was a big, big, big weak point that they could have made so much stronger, um, with the movie, but they didn't.
Yeah.
I really don't know why they wouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
Personally, I think that was actually like kind of a perfect mention of where you could have like paid homage to the original, but made it your own.
And why have there be a dagger in it if it's not going to be a central?
Right.
Yeah, or they really could have tried and break expectations, and suddenly, oh, there's a dagger in the cane. I've seen this movie before. I know how this is going to end. And then the dude with the dagger, like, it just doesn't work, or like it doesn't kill him, and something else has to happen. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
They really could have done a lot with that, and I agree with you. They definitely did. And also, this movie I think ran through a couple of writers,
Yes.
which definitely hurts, because then I can't speak to it. I like to write, but I can't speak to it for working on other people's work. But I understand the idea of you want to somehow preserve what worked about this previous script, because clearly it worked to some extent, but you don't want to change it too hard that suddenly somebody loses credit.
Right.
I kind of get it.
This movie originally had another director attached to it. Of course, I don't have his name in front of me, but was no one that I recognized. But anyways, he had creative issues with this. This movie was in pre-production for a long time. And then so finally at the last minute, the producers, like, because the original guy just didn't want to do the way the producers wanted to do it. So they got rid of him and they hired Joe Johnston at the last minute. Now, Joe Johnston, as you guys may know, he's done a lot of great movies. He did Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, The Rocketeer, Jurassic Park 3, which I also consider a decent monster movie. And he also did Captain America, the First Avenger, among several others. So he's a competent, well-established director. And Andrew Kevin Walker, who wrote Seven and Sleepy Hollow, who knows his moody films, wrote the original script of this. And Johnston, for whatever reason, hired a guy named David Self to rewrite the script. And David Self also wrote Road to Perdition and The Haunting, which is not a great remake.
Wow.
Road to Perdition's a really good movie. So
it is, yeah.
Between the two of them, I think they got a decent script out of this, and of course, it's based on Kurt Siodmak's original script. So,
yeah, I think its biggest flaw was that it didn't have a clear vision from the beginning. I think the vision comes through in some aspects and doesn't come through in others. Like we said, like the end werewolf fight, I think is a fantastic idea, and they really should have capitalized on it, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And I think partially because there was multiple visions going on, and then Joe Johnston he can't do everything. So I kind of get it.
I wonder if they shot the fight like several different times, and then just in the final edit they didn't do the best assembly of it.
Yeah, that must have been it, because I mean Hugo Weaving plays the that investigator.
Yeah,
and Hugo Weaving is no actor to waste. I mean, he's Hugo Weaving.
That was possibly a setup for a sequel, right? That he had been injured but survived at the end.
Yeah, I remember that as a kid. I was like, oh, whoa, and then nothing came of it. And I'll never forget how like disappointed I was when it just wasn't a success.
I want to see a werewolf movie with Hugo Weaving as the werewolf.
Right.
Or, or some sequel where that leads to that connects to the old Wolfman movies, and then suddenly, a generation has gone by. You can call it the Wolfmen and have multiple werewolves now.
Yeah.
I thought about this for a little while. Like this.
Yeah. I also thought it would have been a really interesting update if she had gotten hurt. Gwen had gotten a like clawed or something a little bit at the end. And then like she shoots him and then notices that it could be just like a little cut, not something really obvious, and like pulls her sleeve down over it and looks over the cliff like, should I just end it now or what? And then, I mean, maybe it wouldn't have worked as a female werewolf in a follow-up movie, but it would have been an interesting, ambiguous ending, I thought.
And I heard that Gwen's father was Claude Rains' cousin, Claude Balls.
Oh yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
Oof. Ouch. Oh.
So let's talk about the cast a little bit here. I just wanted to mention Benicio del Toro obviously plays Lawrence Talbot, and we mentioned fuck you. Hold on. It's to remind me to drink my water. I drink 120 gallons. 120 ounces of water a day. I keep calling it gallons. I don't know why.
Ounces?
Yeah, ounces of water.
Gallons? Good fuck.
I'm just
It
gonna
must be hydrated.
slosh away. Um, I always remembered Benicio del Toro from he was in the James Bond movie License to Kill with Timothy Dalton.
Oh yeah.
He's like so skinny and scrawny in that movie, and here he's like big and bulky, and he's definitely channeling his inner Lon Chaney in this movie. I thought.
I mean, who wouldn't?
Well, yeah,
Channeling is Chaney.
channeling his Chaney, but he's got that pathos that Chaney always had, and like you said, Spence,
Yeah.
they didn't really capitalize on that. They should have. It should have been more of a psychological thing of him coming to grips with it. They didn't have any of that really, where the whole we don't believe in this sort of nonsense. But
Right.
that being said, it's because it takes place in 1891, which is between Frankenstein was written in 1888 and Dracula was written I have it in my notes here, 1897. So this movie sort of, I think they purposely set it in the right between those two rather than have it be any other decade,
I suppose. I just think that would have been a way to capitalize on the horror without it being a the critique just being, well, it wasn't scary. Like, no, it wasn't, but it could have been.
Right.
Especially the asylum scene. I still have like memories of how creepy that shit was.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't like. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, especially dunking not only him into the water, but the young version, the young actor that plays him in the water. I'm like, how did they do that? Like, get away with it,
I know, right? It probably wasn't even cold water. It was probably something else.
It could have been, yeah.
But
it's a viscous material.
I don't like the random nightmare flashy shit that they put in some of these movies. I think they did it in Cursed too. Or even in American Werewolf in London, I think he has these weird dreams and he wakes up and he thinks he's awake, but then he's still dreaming. It's like,
I agree.
Just come on, enough with this shit. Like, do it in the real fucking world or knock it off. Like, I'm so tired of it. Like, all this weird. I mean, I kind of liked it in the remake, the Wolfman remake, when after he had gotten bit and he was in the bed and he like had no concept of time and he was kind of fading in and out. I mean, that a little is okay, but I don't know. I just felt like they overdid that shit.
I agree. I think it's a kind of a staple in werewolf movies, partially because of the Wolfman. Because in the Wolfman, one of my least favorite scenes in the original, and I try not to mention this because some people have really liked it, but that moment where everything starts spinning and like it's like really awkward.
Can you be more specific?
In the original, when he's at the branch and everything starts like getting all spinny.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I hate that so much. I freaking hate that entire sequence. I want to look away until he gets back to his like little estate. And then I'm like, all right, cool. Now the movie's back to normal. But it's just so like frustrating to me when they do that because because it added nothing to the movie besides just making him feel all wibbly wobbly when I don't know. I really never appreciated that. So when the dream sequences in the remake actually added to the mystery, it felt a little bit more interesting.
And how is he dreaming about that feral wolf boy that Anthony Hopkins tells him about, later on?
Yeah.
I think that added to the mystery for me personally. When I rewatched it, I really liked I really, really enjoyed the whole, but wait a minute, who is that type moment of like, who is this kid? Is this like just him perceiving young himself, or did something really happen? And is this some kind of like a biological memory?
And I will say this time around, I didn't recall, like, I kind of thought, I think Anthony Hopkins is a werewolf in this too, but I kind of forgot that whole thing. And his origin story that he tells about how he's, traveling somewhere and the feral wolf boy bites him and that's where he became a werewolf. That is so reminiscent of the Werewolf of London, the Henry Hull original Universal Wolfman movie, because that same thing happens to him. He goes off to the mountains to find a flower or something and he gets bitten by a wolf.
Yes, that was intentional. That was an intentional thing on their part.
Yeah,
and the Anthony Hopkins character is a big game hunter, so that's probably what he was doing.
That's right, yeah.
But I gotta say, I hated that. I don't want to know how the father became a werewolf. He just is.
Right.
Like he probably like that whole thing of like, well, let me give you some exposition as to how I became a werewolf. I was like, oh, fuck off. Like he's a big game hunter. He came across a weird thing one time, and then when he woke up, he was injured, and then he's a werewolf now. Like I didn't need like the hike and the scene of the weird creepy boy. But I was just like, what? Why?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't mind it. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
I disagree. I thought it was
don't need to be
interesting.
explained. Yeah.
I think it was one of those things where if they didn't explain it, they wouldn't have been able to pay homage to where the werewolf curse came from, because they don't have the whole Bela dies and Lawrence gets the curse kind of deal. So they don't have the ability to they have the legend from Maria Spenskaya's recast character, who was criminally underused.
Yes.
But they have that whole thing, but they don't really have the explanation of, well, where does it come from? We don't need to know where Bela got it, but the fact that his father got it is kind of a big deal, and it changes the father dynamic from the original movie. So for me personally, I really liked that I also liked that it was more exotic, that it was that they tied it back to the whole, we're gonna, like, it's not from England, it's from beyond England kind of deal. That it was brought on, like originally it was brought on by the Romani, but then it was brought on by an Englishman who went and traveled, which changes the game completely.
Yeah. I guess I just didn't want to see it. I would rather have him just talk about it, like, oh, I had this fucked up experience, than just seeing this weird, like, feral boy. It's like, then it makes me wonder, okay, what happened to him afterward, and like, where did he come from? And
that does bring up a good
peeve.
It's a good question of, where does the line between show don't tell? I personally didn't mind that it was show and not tell, because I'm always in favor of showing and not telling, because the telling only works when you're trying to mythologize something, whereas this was kind of has a practical application on the situation.
Well, for me, show not tell might have been the father, like, changing his shirt and looking at his arm and seeing there, we could see there's a bite there.
Definitely.
And then, okay, he's a wild game hunter. He got bit at some point. Like, okay, I in this case, he was telling and showing at the same time. And I don't know. Maybe they just wanted another jump scare.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows? Yeah.
But it does explain at least the hallucination.
That's
which
true, yeah.
I did appreciate. I always really, really hate hallucinations that mean nothing. So I did appreciate, oh, okay. So clearly there's some sort of genetic link there, because like he clearly didn't intend to infect Lawrence, but when he did, he's like, well, now I can't kill you. Like
right.
you're kind of part of the group now.
Well, that's like, Spence, Mike and I talked about this movie Curse with Joshua Jackson, by the way, who played Peter in Fringe. And the movie was a big mess, and they ended up shooting it 3 times, and real short, because if people want to listen to our episode about it, they can. But there's a dream sequence in it that makes absolutely no sense, and there's one shot that stuck out to both me and My-Kill where there's just like a close-up of somebody's eyeball and a fly lands on the eyeball.
Yeah,
that had nothing to do with anything in the movie.
Yeah, I hate that.
It looked like an outtake from the video they watch in The Ring.
Right.
Like it was just arbitrary, like unsettling. Yeah.
That's funny.
So you mentioned Maliva in this film. She's played by Geraldine Chaplin, who I remember her face looks so familiar to me, and I had to go look her up. And if you look at pictures of her online, she was a hottie when she was younger. She was in Dr. Zhivago in 1965, which was a big movie for its time. And I don't remember this, but she also played Hannah Chaplin in the Robert Downey Jr. movie Chaplin, where he was the life of Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, I saw that movie.
Yeah. I don't remember if Hannah
she
was
also played she was the nanny in Jurassic World Dominion.
Yes. Yep.
Fallen Kingdom. No. Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
And
World Garbage.
I like them. They're not good, but I like them.
Okay. The first one I could tolerate, but the second one was so awful that I refused to see the third.
I'm gonna watch the third eventually, but it's fine.
I mean, okay, yeah, it's fine. It's just
it's fine.
Guilty pleasure. Dumb, but it's
no,
fun,
not good. I'm defending the remake of the Wolfman. I'm not defending the remake of Jurassic Park.
Okay.
We're not that level yet.
Any movie, think about it this way: any movie is at least somebody's favorite film.
I disagree.
True.
I disagree. There are some movies where if that's your favorite film, we're not friends. I'm sorry. Some movies, not many
Well,
movies.
yeah,
Not
right,
many
yeah.
movies. Some movies. Some
Yeah.
movies.
Shannon, do you want to get sued? So you guys brought up Hugo Weaving, who plays Inspector Francis Aberline here. I guess the character is loosely based on a real investigator named Frederick Aberline.
Oh, Aberline is a very important person. You should know who Aberline is.
Well, they mentioned it. He goes, "Oh,
They
I
mentioned
worked
the
on that
Ripper, yeah.
case." Yeah,
Yeah.
and you could tell. And
Yeah. He's the
what?
yeah. He's the investigator
right.
for Jack the Ripper.
And the look on Hugo Weaving's face was like, "Oh, you bastard," because it obviously was unsolved. And it was sort of a blemish on his credentials because he never solved it, and I love the fact that Hugo Weaving just gives that look like, fuck.
Yeah.
And then he leans forward and he's like, listen,
Yeah.
I'm not your enemy, but if you're going to treat me like that,
we're going to have a problem.
Folks at home, obviously, Hugo Weaving played Agent Smith in the Matrix films, as well as the Red Skull in Captain America.
He was in the Lord of the Rings, right?
He was, he was one of the elves, right?
He was one of the elf kings or something.
Yeah. And he was also V in V for Vendetta.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
I got to see that now.
Oh, so good. It's such a good movie.
Interesting. I love Hugo Weaving. I also thought he was relatively underused for a character they invented that was actually had a really cool backstory. They could have used him more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There were so many missed opportunities in this movie.
Yeah.
I think that's
tons of them. And then maybe it's because the production was fucked up and the directors changed and the writers changed. They did the best they could. Yeah. But there were so many moments where I was like, oh, come on, why did they do it like that?
Right.
Like the dog, when the son first gets to the father's house, the dog is like, and then that never really, the dog's behavior doesn't change all that much. He kind of gets used to him, but then after, Talbot is bitten and it basically is the werewolf, the dog's behavior, like they could have done something really interesting with that to show the contrast. Because in the beginning, the father had to tell the dog a few times, like, Samson, enough,
right,
calm down, chill out.
But then at a later point, Larry's sitting there petting the dog after he'd been bitten.
Yeah, and the dog's, but I mean, that could have just been he got used to him, but should have been the other way around, right? The dog's friendly, right. And then after he becomes a werewolf, the dog freaks out, or the dog is hostile when he comes in. And then in that scene when Talbot's in the hallway and the dog comes around, maybe the dog backs away from him and piddles on the floor or something. Like, do something to show a contrast. Don't just introduce the dog and do nothing with it.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think they really could have done a nod to the Jack Nicholson movie Wolf in here. There was actually a few of them, but one didn't like them.
Mm-hmm.
And
what is it?
Jack Nicholson's movie Wolf from 1994, which Mike and I covered recently. Larry starts to develop super hearing just like Nicholson did. Spence, you have to see this movie. It's really good.
I probably should.
He feels great after being bitten. A day later, all of a sudden he's like, oh, my shoulder feels even stronger than before, and of course
stops wearing his glasses.
Yeah. And the werewolf in this movie, of course, has a ridiculous underbite, which
that's totally impractical.
Yeah. It's like, how does he not claw his nose to death?
How does he bite anybody? Anything?
Right.
I mean, he probably just have a massive jaw.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a Chihuahua dog named puppy named Calvin, and he had the little underbite. I always thought of the Wolfman, but at least his were tiny and functional,
Yeah. But the thing is, in a brief shot or in a photo, it looks cool. It's just not practical.
Right. Yeah.
I think it looks neat.
Yeah, I agree. I love the way the Wolfman looks in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Personally, I think he's just so good.
And he's more like not even like a wolf, except for the dark nose, which looks canine-ish. But his claws are huge. Like, he's really just a monster,
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I always loved about the Wolfman is its influence on werewolf design is massive. Is should not be undersold, because there's this game I like to play that I hear that Pop hears me talk about a lot. It's one of the Resident Evil games, and in this Resident Evil game they have a big werewolf monster that comes and likes to attack you. But it's the reverse of the Wolfman. Instead of it looking like a dog or a man that has dog features, it looks like a dog that has man features. It's creepy as hell. So this one, I really love how he looks like somebody with just some animal features, because that one is a great dichotomy where it looks like a giant dire wolf, but it has the ability to stand on all fours, and its face looks like a person but with a massive jaw. So it looks like a wolf in everything but the face, instead of the reverse that we have here where it looks like a person, where it looks like a wolf in the face, but then the rest of it is mostly humanoid. So I really will always adore the Wolfman's impact on design, and even this movie caters to it with the design. The design is very much this, like you said, he's a monster. He's a horrific amalgamation of the two, instead of just being kind of a hybrid. He looks like almost a facsimile of what a werewolf would be.
Right.
I love that.
So for the folks at home, I'm going to share an image here. We've been talking about with these werewolf movies. We've been referencing the Werewolf the Apocalypse tabletop role-playing game. And there are different forms that werewolves can take. And I think this game, I think we all three of us agree that this game does it perfectly. So you've got, can you guys see this?
Yep.
Okay. So you've got the hominid form, which is a human. Hold on. There we go.
Can you go a little bit? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And then you've got the glabro form, which is what we see in this movie, as well as the original Wolfman. And I think even Jack Nicholson's Wolf, we saw this. And then Krynos, you've got the howling, the full-on bipedal werewolf. And then Hispo is more like a dire wolf, which is what we saw at the end of American Wolf in London. Also in I think there's a regular wolf. Oh, Lupus form is sort of regular wolf size. That was at the end of Wolf. We saw that as well. So these are the different forms we're constantly referring to, and we're constantly saying Krynos form because it's the perfect description for all these forms. I don't know any other way.
Yeah, there's really not this. It's a great way to just kind of like formalize what we're saying, because it's just this is the glabro form, and this is the Wolfman remake is a lot more Krynos like, where it has a lot more wolf-like features, because in the game they like to establish that the glabro form can speak, it's just difficult, and Krynos can't speak at all. So there's kind of this weird middle ground that the movies like to take, and I think the movies are a great way to show off different aspects of it. And also the movie, I think, is closer to Krynos because he becomes bigger. It's bigger, can't really talk, kind of crazy. Whereas the Wolfman from the original is strong, but it's limited by its production.
Right.
And I'm perfectly okay with that. I think that works perfectly fine for what the movie is and what we want it to be.
And this reminds me, oh, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, this reminds me of another movie, My-Kill, that you and I just covered recently, which folks should already have heard, called Wolves.
That's what I was going to say. Wolves. Yeah.
With Jason Momoa, which, by the way, Spence, you should see that one.
Wolves?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's from like 2014 or something, right?
It was really good.
Really? Yeah. All right.
I mean,
they're sort of in between the Glabro and Krynos as well, sort of like this movie, and it works. It totally works.
I don't know if I completely agree about it. To me, it's the Glabro. Like, unless it's fully upright with the extended ankles and the snout and the whole 9 yards, to me, it's not. I know you guys are saying it's in between. I don't know. To me, it's. I see where you're coming from, but maybe I just like to keep things simple in my head. But something that we talked about, Roger, when we were talking about Wolf and then talking about wolves, was that when you do a more Glabro style werewolf in a movie, it's still the actor. It doesn't become this completely computer generated or completely animatronic thing, which is cool. But like, I don't know, they still get to emote like a I don't know, like the Lon Chaney version and even the Jack Nicholson version, to some extent. He doesn't really fully get to Glabro, I don't think, but he's on his way. And then in Wolves, I think that they're all pretty much Glabro. And I love that. I love that, even if they completely stop talking and whatever else, I like when like I went through a phase when I was growing up where I was like, oh, like all those like Lon Chaney style glabro where they're still wearing clothes and they're walking around, and I was like, well, those are stupid. Those are not like real werewolves. But then now I've completely come around the other way, where
Yeah.
like I think the other kind of werewolf is cool. And if it's in a video game or like an animated thing or something where that's the primary form that it's always in, then I like that. But now that I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or what, but like my perspective has changed. So I really prefer the wolf man, the mannish wolf, like the more the glabro form where they can running around in the torn clothes and everything. And I actually don't like it when they run on all fours. Like I get it, but it just is not practical with a human body. The legs are so much longer than the arms. It looks weird.
I liked it in the remake because I thought the remake took it a step where I took it in a really great step where he kind of does develop those proportions in a way,
Yes.
and I really appreciated that when they actually I saw, like, I was watching a little bit of like behind the scenes work, and that how they basically had come to the point where they're like, yeah, so it didn't look great when he was running on both feet when nobody was looking at him. Like when you're in the middle of a fight, sure, you're going to run a certain way to keep your guard up, but he wasn't in that. So it made more sense to go all fours, pedal to the metal type deal. And I really, 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 really like that.
And the first time he transforms, you're right. They actually show his feet when he's like climbing up the stairs, and they show his feet changing and his ankles extending. And so,
Yes.
they didn't really show it that much when he had the pants on. But yeah, you're right. It was more pronounced than the Lon Chaney one for sure.
I definitely really love that. I have vivid memories of that transformation of him on the stairs. I have very, very vivid memories from that, and I loved that transformation. And I remember how gruesome it was, and I remember understanding how gruesome it was. I remember appreciating just how much like pain this dude was in from turning into a
Yeah.
werewolf. You're not able to get that just purely based on technology from the
Right.
original Werewolf. And this one I thought did a great job turning into a werewolf, very, very American Werewolf in London style, where it felt you felt it when he was going
Yeah.
through it. And it was also this traumatic thing because it was in a way reminiscent for him. So I really appreciated that aspect of it where he was, I don't know, like in a way it had to do with his history as a character, and that made it feel a little bit more than just, oh, this teenager who's going through puberty. Like, no, he's unlocking some part of himself, and it's awful.
Right, right. And I felt though some of the CGI though, like for his head when he was transforming, there was something that made me uncomfortable, and not in a good way. It was just like it looked stupid and cartoony, where his eyeball gets giant, and I was just like, really?
Yeah,
This
there were moments where like the cheekbones kind of like the jaw and the cheekbones didn't line up, and it looked weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
I found that for most of the CGI in this movie, I personally will stand by the idea that it worked. I've
Yeah.
had a hard time in my life noticing bad CGI. I truly have a hard time noticing when people are like, "Oh, the CGI was terrible." I'm like, I don't know, I thought it was pretty great. Like people complained about things like Jurassic World and stuff, but I'm like, I don't know, I thought it was really awesome. I didn't notice these issues that people were talking about. I love. I will say I did notice some things definitely looked a little bit more cartoonish and significantly less realistic as they were going for. But the combination of CGI and practical, I think, is where this movie truly shines. It's those moments. I think the CGI when it wasn't the pronouncing feature was when it was just at its best, because him running through London and killing people and all that jazz was awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely awesome. I stand by that. I will die on that hill. It is fantastic.
Yeah, they cranked it up a notch for sure.
And so I loved all that. I don't always necessarily notice when it's like, oh, CGI didn't look great. His transformation in the
Asylum.
the asylum was, I can see what people were saying after I had watched it again, but I still personally thought it looked really cool because it was so surreal. And
So,
I was okay with that, but I can understand why somebody would critique that pretty hard.
So I'm going to share a couple of quick images with you guys here because you guys I know, are not familiar with the Spanish actor Paul Naschy, who's played the Wolfman in several films. We're talking about his makeup. I just wanted to give you guys an idea. It's too bad Rod Barnett and I talked about some of his movies a few episodes ago, but he wasn't unfortunately able to make it here today. But I want to, or he was unfortunately unable to make it here. Excuse me. But I wanted to show you what his werewolf looked like in some of the films. Here's one. I forget what this one is from.
Oh wow, that's cool.
He's done a lot of cool werewolf. You know, his movies don't have much continuity at all, and it's generally the same character, Voldemar Daninsky, and it's sort of like a different origin story in every film, but you just kind of have to go with it because they're just fun to watch. And then this one I just found has like all no, I don't know if it's all, but
Wow.
from several movies, several iterations that he's done of the Wolfman.
Oh, this is all the same dude?
Same dude, Paul Naschy. And they're all just from
Wow.
different films with maybe different makeup artists. I'm not sure. I like this one. This one's my favorite one here.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
But
I like the one to the left of it, actually.
this one here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the one right below that. I think that looks really cool. I like the dog ears.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like this one. He looks like a gorilla or something.
Yeah. And the one in the bottom left corner is pretty cool too.
This one, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So there's been a lot of werewolf movies out there, and we've barely scratched the surface with these 13 episodes here.
Wow.
So I'm gonna just stop sharing that, and then let's start wrapping this up here. Get back to my notes. As it takes 5 hours to come back up. There we go. So where did it go? Hello. Oh, there we go. So we talked about. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say one more thing that I thought was a little bit of a missed opportunity was the bear when he went to the gypsy camp. He went to the gypsy camp seeking out the woman to talk about whatever, and then everybody started freaking out and running, and like because the werewolf was there, like killing a bunch of the gypsies, and you know, they were trying to shoot it, and it was running behind the carriages and whatever. And right before that, they had a bunch of them like accusing the guy with the bear and saying, "Oh, the bear's been killing it. It's pretty obvious that it's been a bear." And the guy's like, "No, he's just a performer. You know, he's harmless." And then the werewolf shows up and is like killing all these people. I'm like, well, how cool would it have been if there was just like a moment where he just, you know, grabbed the bear and just ripped him in half or something? Like, it would have been so cool just to have him, I don't know, kill the bear. The bear's there, you know,
and even have the bear hold its own for a little bit, you know.
Absolutely.
Just for like a couple of, you know, 30 seconds or something, and then either have it run away or have him like have the werewolf just rip it, you know, whatever, kill it. I felt like, why introduce the fact that there's a bear there and then not, maybe they skipped it because it was too much CGI or something.
Maybe.
Very possibly, yeah. I always loved see, bears for me, I think, are a really great little tidbit in human history, because people did not believe bears really existed, which is one of my favorite facts to learn.
Wow.
Ever. People you know, wolves are like, we've always understood dogs, and like a werewolf, very funny. Bears, imagine trying to explain to somebody, so there's this giant furry tank and it basically runs around on all fours, but if you piss it off, it'll get up on its hind legs and try and eat you. Like, that doesn't work, right? It doesn't make any sense. You would call somebody crazy for that.
Yes.
So I totally agree with you that a bear is a missed opportunity to showcase the power of a werewolf.
Yeah.
Totally. Like that really, I was a little like, oh, but then at the same time, I think it also would have been really sad if a performing bear did just get mauled because a werewolf showed up. So I can kind of understand at least the reason why they wouldn't want to do that.
Oh my God, there's so many great sequences in this, you know, like when he attacks the gypsy camp and the limbs are flying everywhere. That was awesome.
Oh, that one dude's kill where he got the claw right in the mouth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right through the roof of his mouth and out through like his nose or whatever, or no, up from under his jaw out through his mouth.
Yeah, which
that
I
was fucking
the first
awesome.
time I didn't see the hand underneath. I thought it went through the back of his head, and then I watched it again this morning, and I saw the hand underneath the jaw, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's
But for
rough.
me, my
I'm
favorite
pretty.
scene.
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
Go.
All right. My favorite scene in this though was when he was tied to the chair and all those people witnessed him turning in, and then just became a
Yeah.
bloodbath because of course the doors opened in instead of out, so they couldn't get out. The stupid janitor couldn't open the door because it was locked.
It appears to be locked, sir.
Yeah.
No shit, it's locked. Open it.
That was just insane. I love stuff like that. And then he ends up out. Were they in London or was it? It was.
Yeah, they were. They
Yeah,
were
I
in
think
London.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, I love when monsters attack in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It was very reminiscent of American Werewolf in London. I thought that was a very good thing that you
Yeah.
didn't get to see that. The kill, it has 7 times the amount of people dead as the original.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that they catered to that and made it feel gruesome. But then also when he has this guilt over, oh my God, did I really just kill all those people? It feels like, yeah, motherfucker, what the hell? Like
Yeah,
there's a little bit of the audience going, well, yeah, I mean, this is real, it's not just like, oh, you grabbed the groundskeeper and like we're like, okay, I guess it's sad, but okay, like this dude worked for your family. Okay. No. You ransacked London. That's a big deal.
I like that too, because they put both the remote village and the city into the same movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never really get to see that.
I really liked the fact that the father was a big game hunter and the whole interior of his house had all these heads and taxidermied animals. And there was that constant like reminder of, and then he said, oh, I've seen what a bear can do and what a tiger can do, but I've never seen anything like this. And on the other hand, it's so malicious and like over the top that it seems like only a human could bring that much, rage into a kill. And so I love that bit of dialogue. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's Anthony Hopkins has a great line when the villagers come to the house to attack Lawrence, and he shoots the statue's head off near one of the main guys, and he goes, "Oh, sorry, Colonel, I meant to shoot you. Sadly, I'm not the marksman I once was."
Yeah.
I did love that line. I did think Anthony Hopkins really nailed that line, and I was like, yeah, there he is. There's the actor that I really wanted to see as the father of this whole thing. So
I get to your point where he was phoning in this performance. He looked really good,
to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in a few key moments where I was really hoping I would get to see something come out, and his character, well, instead of being this like detached psychopath, he just came off as just detached and almost like an abusive father, which I was kind of implied because he kind of is like, oh, I sent my son to an asylum for witnessing me kill his mom. There's that. And they don't really kind of get into that. And he never really faces any accountability for it. Just the fact that he's a murdering psychopath, or at least that he's come to be one.
So wait a minute. I hadn't thought about this before. So the werewolf that attacks the gypsy camp is the father.
Yes.
So he bites his own son. So that's why he sort of, after that, he kind of has a smug look on his face whenever he's talking to him, because he knows that he's transforming into a werewolf.
Yes.
I didn't catch that.
I don't understand really why he does it. Is he trying to get the son to stay there and like join him sort of, or is he biting him to?
This is where I think Anthony Hopkins' acting could have relayed so much story. It's kind of implied that because his son was an actor and not like him, like a hunter, or I guess at some point he was disappointed in Lawrence. That there was this level of oh, I don't appreciate you as my son. And they tried like that relationship didn't really ever get like as elaborated on when it really could have. And that I think that's where for me personally, I found that Anthony Hopkins could have just like, come on, like tell us more about at least a little bit about your character. And that didn't really come through for me. And I was like, I kind of had to read into it, and I did a little bit of like of plot synopsis, and I'm like, okay, I get it now, because Larry Talbot isn't an actor in the original, so that was a change, and they wanted to add more to this family. Like I said, instead of being a well-known aristocrat, he's kind of a rough and tumble old man who's just been living in his rich house for a little while.
Right.
And it's all right.
This makes me think of two things now, actually. So from the scene from the original and then from this one. So let's think about this. So in the original, when the gypsies, when Bela attacks Jenny, and the gypsies all freak out and they're like, there's a werewolf in camp, there's a werewolf in camp. So first of all, how did they not know? Maliva obviously was hiding him well, and because they travel around, maybe he went out and killed, outside of the camp. So it never really affected them. But then in this movie, you've got Anthony Hopkins, who's living in the same house for who knows how many decades. He's only got a limited range that he can go to kill. You would think that after enough killings, after a while, the authorities would kind of figure it out and track him down to the house. So I feel like that's
Well, he did.
they hadn't considered, or what?
Yeah, he did say that he had the manservant like lock him up every
Oh,
month
that's true.
in
That's
the
true.
cellar. By the way, was the guy who played the manservant the chief terrorist from True Lies?
Oh, it may have been. I'll have to look
Because
back.
he looked a little familiar. If you shave off all the hair and stuff, it might not be, but
I couldn't tell you.
Let me look that up. Oh my God, come on.
I mean, I can look it up too. I don't know why I'm just asking the question sitting here like an eggplant.
No, it's all right. I should have had it and I didn't really go through all the actors because I didn't really know many of them. Let's see. Wolfman.
Yeah, that manservant was also an addition. I thought that was a good addition that kind of allowed for this plot hole of, well, what the fuck was he up to? Like, well, now we know.
Art Malik.
Yeah. Now that you mention that, his face looks very familiar. Where is he? He plays Singh, the Sick.
Sick, dude.
Oh yeah, that's him.
That is him. Okay.
True Lies. Yeah, he was Aziz in True Lies. Oh, he was also in Living Daylights.
Oh,
That's a great name.
What?
That's a great name for anything remotely related to vampires.
Oh, it's a James Bond film though.
it's a James Bond movie.
Why? That sounds so good if it was a vampire thing. God, you scared the living daylights out of me.
I think that's
Imagine a vampire said that to you.
Says he's like, we're going to scare the living daylights out of something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was him. Good call on that one. I didn't even recognize that. But yeah, so let's see, what else did I have to say here about this film? This phlegm. Yeah, like I mentioned, the only someone who loves him can kill him comes from House of Frankenstein. Yeah, it's too bad.
That was like such a throwaway line. Like you could almost watch the whole movie and not even notice that. It was so, yeah.
But it did come into play at the end. But
it did, yeah.
And at least at the very beginning, they did the whole "even a man who's pure in heart" thing at the very, very beginning, and then they never mentioned it again, which I thought was, your point was great. They didn't have to.
Yeah. It was good that they mentioned it.
I felt like that was to let you know, yes, this is a remake of the original. Yeah. Oh yeah, and the dude that gets stuck in the quicksand and he goes to shoot himself and he's out of bullets and the Wolfman comes over and just swipes his head right off.
I loved the violence in this movie. It was so awesome. I'm like, like I said earlier, if I ever wrote a werewolf story, this is what it would be like. Just shredding through people like tissue paper.
Right.
It would be so, I just loved it. And even the first guy who gets killed, he gets bitten and then the werewolf chases him and then comes up to him and rakes his claws right across the guy's face. And I was like, yes, now we're talking.
Now, was that the brother at the beginning?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So the father killed his own son.
Yes. Yeah. That was.
But it's. I think he says, "Oh no, never mind." They never really explained why that happened.
They tried, and I don't like it. So what they tried to say was that Anthony Hopkins started to get the eyes for Gwen. And so on a subconscious level, he chased after the son to get rid of him as competition.
I see.
Which adds to the theme of, this is all subconscious dealings. But I still don't like it. I still think that that's just kind of a waste, that they could have just, they could have just decided, oh, we're just going to, say they got into a falling out and then it was subconscious that he regrets it, but they never go into that.
Yeah.
They never address. It's just like they kind of imply that Gwen is the object of desire, and
Yeah.
the poor son gets killed by his dad for it. Like, what the cubic hell?
What the
I like, yeah. But it's weird too, because at the beginning the son is in the forest going, "Show yourself. I know you're here." And I'm like, does he know it's the father, or is he just looking for, something that I mean, it doesn't need to be. It's just an interesting intro, I guess. But I like the fact, I do, I bitched about the exposition before, but I do like the fact that the father explains that he was having the manservant like lock him up all the time when there was a full moon, so he couldn't get out and do anything, but that they got drunk together or something, and they started doing like a boxing kind of thing, bare knuckle boxing, and the father knocked the manservant out, and then on that night, because he had knocked him out, the manservant couldn't lock him up, and so when he changed, that's when he went out and killed the mother.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because he never
Oh, yeah, yes. Okay, that had slipped my mind.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that the son saw the werewolf and blocked it out and replaced it in his head with her cutting her throat with the blade.
Right. Yeah. I thought that was a cool touch, because that does happen.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I thought that was really, really awesome. I really enjoyed that, because
Well,
I remember. Well, for me, it affected my memory of the movie. I remember I was like, oh yeah, he found the mom, and there was a whole thing with that. And then when I rewatched it, I'm like, oh, I thought the dad was the werewolf. What? And then so then now I'm going through the movie again, and I'm having a reverse of what I had experienced the first time I watched it, where I was like, oh my god, he's the werewolf. I thought he was a werewolf. Oh, he is a werewolf. So I had that moment, which is pretty funny.
And I think that kind of plays into, we've talked about the role-playing game again before, and again, they have something called the veil, which protects supernatural beings. So if a human sees something, something supernatural, their brain rationalizes it away. And that's what I think is illustrated here, is that he couldn't comprehend, especially as a little kid, a werewolf. So he rationalized it as the mother killed herself. And as a defense mechanism, not only to keep the supernatural a secret, but also to protect his brain from frying,
Yeah, no, that would, no, he got sent to the asylum either way. Like, he would have gone to an asylum. I saw my mother killed by a werewolf. Get out of here, kid.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Versus, oh, I saw my dad kill my mom. You're still out of here, kid.
Right, right.
Like, sorry, son. So there's that.
So a couple quick things I wanted to mention. Apparently there's a director's cut out there, which I was unaware of, and it's unrated.
Oh,
I think it adds like 17 minutes.
Oh, the one I watched last night was unrated.
What platform did you watch it on?
I think I rented it on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Because I watched it on, what did we watch on, Spence? Peacock, I think?
Peacock, yeah.
Yeah. So it didn't say unrated. But apparently Max von Sydow appears as an elderly man at the beginning who gives Lawrence Talbot the cane.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't see that scene.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was in the one I watched. Oh, okay. I guess I saw the extended one then.
Rick Baker makes a cameo as the first gypsy who's killed in that whole sequence. And one thing I thought was interesting, and I was actually trying to listen to it when I watched it the second time around this morning. Apparently they incorporated elements from rock singers Gene Simmons and David Lee Roth, as well as opera singers and animal impersonators into the Werewolf's Howl. And I didn't quite...
Yes, I did hear that.
Did you? Okay.
Well, I heard the fact. I didn't necessarily actually hear it in terms of proper.
Oh, you heard that? Yeah.
I knew that fact, because I had learned that, but I did not know. I didn't really hear it, which I think is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a net
but
positive.
It's great. Blend those sounds together. I mean, like, and then it's great. It's got layers, but some of them are human and some of them are animal, and I thought that worked really well. I actually, at the end of the movie, even though it's kind of a cliche in monster movies, the end of the movie where he's about to kill Gwen and she's trying to talk to him, like, I know you're in there and you know me, whatever. I was actually a little bit scared for her, because at no other point in the movie did Talbot show any self-control when he was in the werewolf form. He was just ripping people to pieces.
Right.
and there was no restraint whatsoever. So even when she was trying to talk to him and stuff, and he sort of hesitated, I thought, oh, it's not going to last. Like he's gonna go right back into attack mode and rip her head off, and then the police are going to have to shoot him or something. But
And he did. That's
um,
what happened.
He shot him, yeah, right in
no,
the
she
chest.
shot him.
She
She shot
him
him just as he was about to lunge at him,
right.
which I thought was awesome. I think you're right that it was just really.
So she survived. She shot him, yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought he was going to like hesitate and then kill her, and then the
Um,
cops would shoot him. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad that
All
didn't
right.
happen. I'm happy that they stuck with the
Yeah.
loved one has to kill you ordeal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's wrap this up here, guys. It's been 3 hours, so
Woohoo!
almost 3 hours. So final thoughts, My-Kill, you go. Final thoughts on the remake of The Wolfman.
I think the whole father son Anthony Hopkins thing is a decent idea, but I think explaining the father's role in the whole thing, there was a little too much explaining, and the final fight wasn't great. But I think Benicio del Toro was awesome, and the transformations were awesome, and the violence was fucking awesome. And I even liked Emily Blunt. They as Spencer said, they grossly underutilized her character, but I thought for what they did give her, she was really good. She was kind of like reserved and buttoned down, but she also has this like smoldering look in her eyes that I thought worked really well for all of it. And at the end, I think she played her being torn between, not wanting to kill him and knowing she has to. Like, I thought that was really well done. So I love this movie. I'll definitely watch it again.
Spence?
Yeah, I really agree. I think while like every other movie has its flaws, I think it's a great movie, and I think it brings a lot to the table and is an excellent example of a remake done right. I think it expands on everything, takes its own creative liberties, and it does everything just how it really should have been, you know, with its moments of weakness. And I overall really like this movie. And if you're a fan of the original, I think you'll like this movie. And if you've never heard of the original, I think this movie is a good description of a remake. So overall, I definitely 8 out of 10 would rewatch. Really enjoyed it.
I agree. I agree with both of you. Definitely rewatchable. I really enjoyed this film, even more so this time around than the first time. It definitely did hold up. I loved one thing we didn't really talk about. I love the fast pacing in this movie, but it wasn't too fast paced. A lot of the camera work really lent itself to adding to this sort of tension as the movie's building up. And of course, you can't argue with limbs flying and blood and guts everywhere. It was so satisfying on a werewolf end of things that I thought that right there is a selling point for this movie. It definitely, obviously, is not as good as the original. I don't think anything's going to ever top the original. But much like I said before, it's like Jurassic Park 3. It's a decent monster movie. It's not terrible. It's really fun. Del Toro, as you guys mentioned, he's great in this. Emily Blunt, she's one of those actresses that I couldn't tell you anything she's been in. I've heard the name. I thought she was like gonna go host
A Quiet Place
or something.
She's been in tons of stuff.
Been in A Quiet Place. She's married to John Krasinski.
Yeah. She was in Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise.
Oh, I still haven't seen that. The
Oh, that's really good. You got to see that.
That's a good movie. I realize it's I think one of Tom Cruise's best movies.
I've heard it's good. I want to see that. But so anyways, yeah, I definitely recommend this. If you want to start off with the original and then go to this one, you're shy about blood and guts, that's probably the route to take. And then if you're a little squeamish, I would definitely probably stay away from the director's cut, which 17 more minutes of bloodshed, I would imagine. So
Yes.
Oh, you know what? I didn't show. Oh, shoot. One last thing, and it's not really a big deal, but I didn't get to show the see, now we've been always showing movie ads from newspapers, and by 2010 they really weren't doing it all that much. So I only have two, and they're actually both kind of similar, or very similar. So I'll show this real quick and then we'll wrap things up. This was from the Chicago Tribune, which I think pretty much across the board, this was just their ad, their promotional poster.
That's pretty great. I like it.
I love that.
Yeah. And then this one's pretty much identical, except at the top it has "The Legend is Alive," which I thought was really cool. But I don't know why it didn't do well. The marketing must just not have been there for
I
it.
don't either.
We certainly saw it in the theater, so
Yeah, I can't figure out why, because there's plenty of other weaker movies out there that did better financially.
right.
So I don't
Definitely,
understand.
definitely.
You know.
So I'm not quite. I think also it would have been a better success if they didn't need the extra $75 million.
Right.
I think that was a big blemish for what was considered a success. But even the fans really didn't like it, and I don't get why. I think it's a movie that could have done with a rewrite, but like most movies could have done with a rewrite, so it's fine.
Oh, the critics hated it. They absolutely did. Well, folks, that's all we have for this year's 2023 13 Days of Hallowtober, in which we talked about werewolf movies. So thank you for joining us. And if you haven't had a chance to check out these films that we talked about, they're really good, except maybe one or two of them. But beyond that, I think we got some winners here. There are so many werewolf movies out there. So you may as well start at the beginning and go watch The Wolfman and then go from there. So thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great Halloween and great October. And we'll see you again on the next episode of Then Is Now podcast.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
See you later.
Welcome to 13 Days of Hallowtober.